Chapter 1. 3 generations of red-headed witches walked into an ice cream parlor. We ordered our treats and took a seat by the window, only to be distracted by the sound of a young woman at the table next to us sighing loudly. What was her problem? Who can be depressed inside a place with so much ice cream? She was sitting at a small table by herself, reading a hardcover book. Her heavy sighs only grew louder as she flipped through the pages. Being a librarian, I feel personally responsible whenever someone is unhappy with a book. I finally turned around, smiled sweetly, and asked, "Is that book getting you down?" She jerked her head up and stared at me with big brown eyes. She was petite, mid-20s and pretty, with dark eyelashes and black hair falling in loose waves around a perfectly round face. She wore a black men's fedora with a tropical print tunic and a short skirt. She looked artsy and fun, like someone I might hang out with despite our age difference. Hipster Chick glanced around the cafe in surprise. "Are you talking to me?" "Yes, I couldn't help but notice you seemed disappointed with your book." "You could say that. I happen to know of a place where you can get some other, less disappointing books." She wrinkled her nose. "I'm sort of on a budget right now. I know a place where the books are free." "You mean the library? That's where I got this." She tilted the hardcover in her hand. There was a Wisteria Public Library stamp along the top edges of the pages. One of ours. Now I felt twice as responsible for her unhappiness. "You don't have to finish every book you start," I said. "I know, but this book was supposed to be good enough to take my mind off my troubles." Hipster Chick scowled and tucked her long, dark bangs behind one ear. "But there's so much missing." I looked at the book. It was a rock star memoir, a popular one from a big publisher. "They probably left out all the juicy bits," I said. "Authorized biographies rarely tell everything." "But the book is literally incomplete." She slammed the book shut in disgust and tossed it on the table. She didn't notice it landing dangerously close to a patch of spilled coffee on the table, but I noticed. I used my witch powers to grab a napkin from a nearby table, float it over, and soak up the coffee spill before it could stain the book. My aunt, Zara Riddle, must have noticed me using levitation in public. She kicked me in the shin under our table. As my mentor witch, she was teaching me the ins and outs of magic. She wanted me to do boring drills and basic spells for practice, but not in public. Despite all the magic coursing through the town, its existence was still a secret to most people. Across the table, my daughter, Zara Riddle, looked mortified. Not about me using levitation in public, but because I was talking to a stranger. Being 16, she was easily mortified. And being a recent transplant to a small town, she wasn't used to the friendly way strangers talk to each other. When we'd first arrived, she had been suspicious of the Too Perfect Town. She had a theory that the local townspeople were robots, like in Westworld, or even hired actors for a secret Truman Show-style prank. No such luck. It turned out the town of Wisteria was just brimming with magic, thanks to the local witches, shifters, and other supernaturals. All of that magic had the pleasant side effect of making people happy, healthy, and unable to gain weight despite the many bakeries and eateries. The ice cream parlor we were currently seated in was only one of a dozen ice cream-themed eateries. Hipster Chick grabbed her large purse and dug around for her phone, which was buzzing when she pulled it out. Her purse was an expensive designer bag, yet her phone had a crack on the screen and was held together with tape. She answered the call tersely. "Now what, Dad?" I wondered if she was a terrible person or if her father deserved such treatment. Some fathers did, but even so, it never reflected well on the child to be so rude. She rolled her eyes. "What do you mean it needs more power? Can't you plug it into the stove socket?" She pushed her chair back and got to her feet with an exasperated sigh. "I don't care what you have to plug it into. Just do whatever it takes. I need that money." She paused, listening, then pleaded in a syrupy tone. "Please, Daddy, for me?" I turned back to my table, giving her back her privacy. I asked my aunt and my daughter, "What did I miss?" Zoe answered, Auntie Z was telling me how you used to say the funniest things when you were little. You called scissors snizzers. And she did it on purpose, Zinnia said to Zoe. Even as a toddler, Zara knew very well how to say scissors and refrigerator and hamburger, but it made her mother's eyes bug out when she said freezerator and hang-a-burger, so that's why she did it. Zoe laughed, and the two of them compared more notes about me. I tried to pay attention, but I couldn't stop listening to hipster chick pulling emotional blackmail on her father. She was quite good at manipulation. After a few minutes of her talking about some sort of machine, she huffed loudly, grabbed her purse, and stomped out of the ice cream parlor. In her haste, she left behind the library book. It was a good thing I hadn't learned any hexes, or I might have cast a mild one on her. The nerve of some people who treat any public space as a library return slot. I grabbed the book, planning to bring it with me to work on Monday. As soon as I put the book on our table, the conversation stopped. My daughter grabbed it and riffled through the pages. After a minute, she said, "I wonder where the good stuff starts." Zinnia whispered something in witch tongue, then proclaimed, "Page 17. Zoe and I exchanged a surprised look before staring at the elder witch. "You naughty girl," I teased. She blushed. "If you must know, I cast a page-finding spell when Zoe was riffling the pages. It's one of our basic bread-and-butter spells, which you both would know all about if you had been doing your homework." Zoe flipped to page 17 in the Rockstar memoir. "There's nothing here," she said. Zinnia replied, "If page 17's not to your liking, try 51. She cleared her throat delicately. "If you like that sort of thing." Zoe lifted the book and leaned in to stare closely. "That's odd. I think there's something wrong with this book." I held out my hand. "Let the librarian have a look." She handed the book over. A mild static shock discharged as I took it into my hands, and the sound in the restaurant changed. The clatter of customers' spoons and glass bowls of ice cream sundaes receded. The whoosh of an employee steaming milk for a cappuccino became a faraway hiss. The volume of the jazz music on the sound system dropped down to distant plinking. Magic. It sure has a way of grabbing your attention and blotting out everything else. "What are you trying to tell me, book?" I opened it to a random page. My breath caught in my throat. I saw the strangest thing I've ever seen inside a book. Now, having worked in libraries for a number of years while working my way up to librarian, I've seen a lot of strange things inside books. I've seen flip art cartoons in the margins, hand-scrawled comments that are more entertaining than the book itself, and even a slice of bacon used as a bookmark. But I'd never seen anything like this. Before my very eyes, letters on the page were disappearing. Not all of them at once, but a word from one sentence and then a short phrase from the next paragraph. Suddenly, a shadow passed over me. Someone yanked the book from my hands. Hipster chick was back. She must have remembered the book and returned for it. She gave me a dirty look and said, "This book belongs to the library." And then she was gone again. Zoe looked at me, then at my aunt, and giggled. Imitating hipster chick, I said, "This book belongs to the library." My aunt gave me an amused look. No good deed goes unpunished. "Did you see what was happening with the pages?" I asked. The ink was erasing itself. Zoe said, "There were some blank spots. Isn't that just a misprint?" "I know what a misprint is," I said. "This was something else." Zoe leaned in. "Magic?" She leaned back again just as quickly. She was caught between showing her excitement about magic and keeping her cool teen detachment. She was also still dealing with the fear that something was wrong with her own witch powers. She had turned 16, the age most witches, at least the ones who aren't me, get their powers. It had been over a month since her birthday, but her ability to execute spells hadn't kicked in yet. "Hang on," Zinnia said. She mouthed something in witch tongue, accompanied by quick hand gestures. "Done. The sound-dampening spell is in place now. We have our privacy, as long as you don't get too boisterous." The words were magically disappearing right in front of me, I said. That's why hipster chicks said the book was missing stuff, because it was. Zoe's hazel eyes widened. Do you think that book could be an ancient magical codex with prophecies and powerful spells? It's a trashy rock star memoir that released last October, I said. Being the resident expert on library books, it's my professional opinion that it was just a regular hardcover. Zoe shrugged. It's still interesting, she asked my aunt. Does stuff like this happen around here all the time? Zinnia was slow to answer, tilting her head from side to side thoughtfully. Not typically. She folded her hands together on the table. It is best for a witch to stay out of matters that aren't one's business. I reached into my pocket and dug around. What if this disappearing ink thing is our business? I grabbed the card I picked up earlier that afternoon and laid it on the table. I flipped it over to show the other riddles that it was blank on both sides. The ink came off this card, too. Zinnia picked up the card and examined it closely. I can see the impressions of lettering on one side. She narrowed her eyes and tilted the card. The gingerbread house of baking? That is what the card said. I paused for drama, before it mysteriously went blank on our way here. Zoe eyed me with suspicion. Did you do this? Mom, don't mess around. I held my hands up. Zoe, I appreciate your belief in my abilities, but this is way above my level. You saw what I did to the orange juice this morning. She smirked. At least you got some extra practice using the sponge to clean the kitchen ceiling. Zinnia didn't ask what happened to the orange juice. She kept looking at the card. Aunt Zinnia, I asked, do you think these two things are connected? Perhaps. She set the card on the counter and tapped it twice. Regardless of any connection, it's not our business. But what if something big is going on? When I picked up that card at the bakery this afternoon, I noticed some other peculiarities. Zoe interjected. That's why your breath smelled like vanilla. You got pastries and you didn't bring any for us. It was just one little donut. I waved for her to shush, and then I relayed to my aunt the other curious things I had witnessed that afternoon. There had been Greeble Gorman, the appliance repair shop owner, who'd run away from me before disappearing in an alley, and then I had heard the owners of the bakery talking about how they might be giving birth to a monster. The woman was already in labor, so they left the bakery to get into a van, which was when I noticed something unusual with the woman's hair. Her blonde curls seemed to have a life of their own. And then, on top of all of that, they drove away in the opposite direction of the hospital. When I finished relating the anecdotes, Zinnia stared at me with a horrified expression. Zara, none of those things are any of your business, she said. If you go around chasing people and listening in on conversations, there will be no end to the trouble you'll bring down upon yourself. She blinked. And your family. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but there was no defense. I had been chasing people and eavesdropping. A hot wave of embarrassment washed over me, making my skin prickle. Just because I was a witch, that didn't mean I had permission to be a busybody. I closed my mouth. My aunt abruptly pushed her chair back and stood. Lovely to see you both, she said through a tight smile. I really must be going. She gave Zoe an affectionate squeeze on her shoulder. Be patient and keep up your studies. She turned to me and lifted her chin. Would it do any good for me to beg you to stay clear of business that isn't yours? Probably not, I said. She snapped the blank business card off the table, tucked it into her purse, and left without another word. Chapter 2. 2 hours later that Saturday, I was still thinking about the strange self-erasing book. I went to my kitchen, where I do my best thinking while puttering around. Using my telekinetic powers, I pulled out a cutting board, several lemons, and a sharp knife. The old Zara Riddle, the one who didn't have witch powers, would have sliced the lemon in the Riddle family tradition, with both hands on the knife handle, safely away from the blade. Both my daughter and I suffer from a specific food prep phobia. We will run from the room if a character on a TV show starts slicing something on screen. But now that I didn't have to hold the knife at all, I had moved beyond mashing helpless fruits and vegetables. I could do amazing things, such as create those thin little matchstick-sized carrot sticks that you find inside egg rolls. And thanks to having been host to a friendly ghost who loved fancy food and entertaining, I even knew what the vegetable sticks were called. From the thickest to the thinnest, they are called bâtonnet, allumette, julienne, and fine julienne. Cubes also have their own special names, but I won't go there right now. I've proved my point, which is this. Being a witch is awesome. My mind puzzled over the day's disappearing ink while I sliced lemons with both of my hands safely in my pockets. Zinnia had told me not to get involved in things that were none of my business. She'd have been better off using reverse psychology. If she'd instead put me onto the case of the missing words, I might not be thinking about it at all right now. I could have been working on my basic spells, such as the cantaloupe ripeness spell. But telling me not to think about something? It was like telling a kid not to stick their finger in a bowl of frosting. I finished slicing the lemons and visited the backyard for some fresh mint. I didn't know half of what was planted out here in the jungle, but I was pretty sure I had mint, or possibly catnip. Either way, it was going into my iced tea. When I came back inside, the doorbell was ringing. Zoe, who was upstairs in her bedroom, yelled, "Doorbell!" I yelled back, "Doorbell!" "Doorbell!" she cried. I replied, "Doorbell!" She thumped her way down the stairs as we exchanged a few more cries of doorbell. I heard her open the front door and politely greet our guest. A minute later, Chet Moore entered my kitchen, looking flummoxed. "If it's Zoe's job to answer the door, why do you both yell about it? Doesn't that defeat the purpose of having it be her responsibility?" I used magic to pick up the pitcher of iced tea and put my hands on my hips. Whatever happened to saying hello before launching into a critique of someone's parenting skills? He didn't laugh. After a brief stare-off, he finally said, "Hello." I bowed formally. "And a very cordial hello to you too, my good neighbor." I used my magic to pull 2 glasses from the cupboard. Other than my family, Chet was the only other person who knew about my abilities. I loved that I could be myself around him. "Would you care for some iced tea with fresh mint, or possibly catnip?" He stared at the pitcher, which was floating mid-air, pouring tea into one glass and then the other. While he was captivated by the levitating pitcher, I studied him, trying to memorize his features. If he wasn't looking at me, stirring up feelings, I could actually see more than his gorgeous green eyes. I noted the angles of his long face, high cheekbones, and hollowed-out cheeks that gave him a hungry look. His hair was nearly black, brightening to a rich mahogany brown when the light from the window caught it. His eyebrows were thick and dark, and his long forehead contained 2.5 wrinkles. 2.5 because the lowest wrinkle line stopped halfway across his forehead, as though it was afraid of his right eyebrow. He was older than me, but he had 0 gray hairs to show for it. Lucky guy. And yet he didn't have the air of someone who believed in his own good luck. There was an aura of discomfort all around my neighbor. He'd hidden it with his wit and charm when we had first met, but now that I'd known him for more than a month, I was through the first layer of the onion. Was this the real Chet Moore? A single father who could never relax, never let his guard down? His apparent discomfort usually disappeared when he smiled, but his smiles had been in short supply lately. I hadn't seen one since the day we pretended to be newlyweds to catch a killer. Had I done something wrong and scared him off? Too much gooey talk while we were playing pretend? Had he invited me for dinner that night so he could break the news that he had no interest in being more than friends? I'd finished pouring the iced tea, but he continued to stare at the floating glasses. I asked, "Is everything okay?" "What do you mean?" "You've been staring at that iced tea like you've never seen magic before. Do you want a glass or not?" "Sure," he said gruffly. "Chet, have I done something to offend you?" "What do you mean? You were the one who got offended when I asked about your daughter and all the yelling about the doorbell." "I wasn't offended." I gently floated the pitcher and the glasses down to the counter, only spilling a few drops. I was getting more control. "Oh." He frowned at the spilled drops. "My question about the doorbell was just a question. That's how normal people are supposed to communicate. Ask questions and listen. I don't know about normal, but I can answer your question, I said. Zoe was raised in apartments where we constantly got in trouble for yelling or singing or generally enjoying life more than our neighbors thought a poor single mother family should. So we had to be careful to keep our voices down, and we always had an intercom or a buzzer, not a doorbell. Doorbells and front doors and porches were exotic things that sitcom families on television had. So you'll have to forgive us if having both a doorbell and the freedom to yell about it has gone to our heads. Chet quirked an eyebrow and gave me a prickly look. If he'd been a porcupine, he would have been bristling with barbed quills. Could he turn into a porcupine? Or just a wolf? I had no idea.
Fair enough, he said. It really was just a question.
I can do questions too. For example, why does your wild child son hang from your clothesline like it's a jungle gym? Is he part monkey? He blinked twice.
Corvin?
Yes, I'm talking about Corvin, unless you have another hyperactive 10-year-old boy living with you. Chet stared at me. Your son? I said, holding my hand 4 feet off the floor. He's about this tall, has black hair, huge eyes, and enjoys terrorizing people. Yesterday, he climbed up on a stepladder outside my kitchen window and stood there, creepily staring at me through the herb garden for heaven knows how long. I went to harvest some chives, and he started screaming bloody blue murder, accusing me of trying to poke out his eyeballs to use them in a potion. He called me a witch.
That's unacceptable,
Chet said, his forehead furrowing. Well, he wasn't wrong, I said. I am a witch.
The boy needs to learn about respect. It's my fault for being too lenient with him.
He smacked his hands together in a gesture that suggested corporal punishment. I was surprised to see this new side of Chet, this sternly authoritative side. Chet gave me a curt nod.
I'll see that he's punished.
Kids will be kids, I said, trying to lighten the mood. He's probably curious. Who wouldn't want to spy on a family of red-headed witches living next door? When Zoe was his age, she was so curious about our neighbors that she started a plant watering service in our apartment building just so she could spend more time inside other people's apartments. I smiled at the memory of her lugging around heavy watering jugs while dressed in her official watering clothes. She'd worn 2 big overalls and covered her hair with the red and white handkerchief she had got from the building superintendent. He was a gruff yet kind man who had made her an official staff name tag, just like the one worn by his elderly mother who vacuumed the threadbare carpets in the hallways. Thanks to his endorsement, Zoe's watering service was a hit. Half the residents of the building gave her their spare keys. The other half continued to complain about our noises and blame us for everything that went wrong in the building, but that was their loss. I told Chet about this, and all he had to say was, "You let your 10-year-old daughter go into other people's apartments by herself?" Of course she went by herself. She didn't want to split her $2 per hour with me. I took a sip of my iced tea. Too much lemon.
Only $2 an hour?
He said.
They were taking advantage of her.
Oh, it was never about the money. I lowered my voice, sensitive to the fact she might be listening from her room upstairs. She wanted to see how other people lived, to see how we compared.
I can imagine Zoe doing that. She's an inquisitive child.
I told her it was too late for us to become normal, but she was so earnest. She thought if we stopped keeping wool sweaters in the oven and started making more casseroles, we could be just like everyone else. She even got a recipe from Mrs. Hutchins for tuna noodle casserole.
And how did that work out?
We got to know the local firefighters, and my poor sweaters were never the same. I fluttered one hand in front of my chest. The buttons on my favorite cardigan melted. Chet studied me, his eyes locking on mine. Once again, all I could see were his hypnotic green eyes. I was under his spell. Was he experiencing the same thing? Was he even half as charmed as I wanted him to be? From what I could see, he showed no signs of being amused by what I considered to be a delightful family anecdote. Most people loved the story about my melted sweaters and how my daughter and I had shared tuna noodle casserole with a bunch of firefighters. Finally, he said,
"You and I have very different parenting styles, Zara."
How so?
You could say I prefer a more traditional approach to fathering.
The word fathering sent my imagination on a tangent. How does that work, anyway? He gave me a funny look.
Raising kids? You have to employ both negative and positive reinforcement.
No, I was wondering, how does parenting work as a wolf shifter? Do the females give birth in wolf form? Can they still shift between human and animal if there's a baby inside them? And what about the actual mating? Chet didn't move a muscle. He seemed to have stopped breathing. Oops, asking about shifter mating habits might have crossed the line. Wow, were my dating small talk skills rusty. I decided to quickly distract him with a whole new line of questioning. Can you turn into a porcupine? Judging by the look on his face, my questions were about as welcome as flatulent sounds in a packed sauna. I laughed it off. Never mind my silly curiosity. Are you ready for dinner? He grimaced and cleared his throat.
Dinner would be good. There are a few things I'd like to discuss.
He grabbed his iced tea and tossed it back like a tequila shot. As he set the empty glass down, he made a choking sound.
Too much lemon,
he gasped.
And why so much catnip?
I kept a poker face. The green stuff hadn't been mint after all. I really had a lot to learn about gardening. Next time, I'll make it without the catnip. He coughed a few times.
I'll recover, he said hoarsely. Let's go.
I glanced around the kitchen. Hang on while I act like a stereotypical female getting ready to leave the house. In other words, give me a minute to find my purse. He crossed his arms and tapped his foot impatiently, acting like a stereotypical male. I hoped he was joking around, or it was going to be a long night. I ransacked the kitchen looking for my bag. When a physical search didn't work, I gave one of my new spells a try. First, I called an image of my purse to my mind. Pink, leather, brass buckle on the strap. With the image in mind, I whispered the summoning incantation and started the gesture, twirling my right hand as though reeling in a fishing line. No purse. I tried again. Still no purse. Had Zinnia taught me a useless spell, or was I just hopeless? Chet continued to tap his foot. I turned my back to him and tried again. I felt a happy twinge inside my chest as the magic snapped together. But still no purse. Had someone stolen it? Chet asked,
Is there an animal trapped inside your refrigerator? Something's thumping around inside there.
I opened the fridge door, and there it was, my purse. It obediently hopped out of the fridge and hitched itself onto my shoulder. Ready to go, I said cheerfully.
Why was your purse in the fridge?
I gave him an innocent look. Well, it's not exactly safe in the oven, is it?
It's not?
Chet, were you not paying any attention at all to my charming anecdote about the burned sweaters and the tuna noodle casserole?
I guess not.
He looked down and shuffled his feet.
I'm a bit rusty at this sort of thing.
You and me both, mister. Let's go get some food. I'm excited about eating something that doesn't come out of a square box. He nodded in agreement, and we walked toward the front door. He paused by the hall table where Zoe and I had been tossing the mail. He pointed to the stack of unopened envelopes.
That's a lot of bills.
Don't look directly at them. I repeat, do not make eye contact. I grabbed Chet's arm and steered him toward the door. Come on, all that mail will be waiting right here when I get home. He dragged his feet.
It's a big stack. Is that a water bill at the bottom?
Chet, don't worry. I'm on top of it. I kept my voice light and bright, but deep down I had a bad feeling. Well, two bad feelings. First, he was right about the stack of unpaid bills being in need of some adult supervision. Second, our date, if it even was a date, was off to a rocky start. If this was how it started, with us bickering over parenting styles and unpaid bills, how was it going to end? Physical combat? Chapter 3. Chet drove us to the restaurant since I didn't have a vehicle and it wasn't within walking distance. The interior of Chet's vehicle was spotless and still had that new car smell.
Chet took good care of his things, unlike me. I had to sell my old car to finance the move to Wisteria, and it took several price reductions for the right buyer to see past all the dents, not to mention the upholstery's ever-present Cheetos odor. Chet's vehicle was refined, sensible, and grown-up, just like him. Was that what I wanted in a man? They say opposites attract. Chet was guarded with his emotions, but that could make him a good compliment for me, a person who constantly makes inappropriate comments to cover the fact that she doesn't quite understand how to act like a regular adult. We arrived at the restaurant, Grazie, which featured authentic cuisine from which European country? Go ahead and guess. If you said Italy, you're right! The word grazie means thanks in Italian, and you can embellish your grazie with other words to make pleasing phrases such as grazie di cuore, which means thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you want to lay it on thick, you can say grazie infinite for infinite thanks. That helpful lesson on the Italian language came courtesy of the informative text written on the back of the grazie menus. I had a lot of time to read the menu because as soon as we arrived at the restaurant, Chet's phone rang and he disappeared to take an important call. All I caught was that it was someone named Carl or maybe Arnie on the phone. Alone at the table, I checked out my surroundings. I had never been inside Grazie before. It was so pretty that I felt guilty for being there without my daughter, who loved anything castle-like or decorated with stones. One time I drove for hours to take her to a water park, and she barely touched the slides. She preferred to hang out inside the subterranean part of the building, which was a dungeon-like grotto where they served ice cream and ran the gift shop. With some prodding, Zoe eventually took a reluctant ride down the water slide. She quickly met some other kids her age, but after an hour, I found her back in the stone-lined underground room examining the lichen on the damp rocks. Grazie didn't have lichen on its stone walls because the rocks were the fake manufactured kind. When I searched for patterns, I spotted matching twin stones taken from the same mold. There was an older gentleman with thick glasses seated at a nearby table. He noticed me looking at the stonework and asked, "Are you visiting in town for long?" His wife, who had equally thick glasses, gave me a sweet smile. "Actually, I live here now," I answered.
"Good for you," he said. "You like the rustic look of those walls?"
"I like old things."
"Ha!"
He looked delighted.
"If you like old things, you should pay a visit to Castle Werven up the coast."
"Castle Werven? Sounds like a tourist trap," I said.
"No, miss. It's the real deal, a genuine castle."
"I'll put it on my list," I said. "My daughter loves anything with a dungeon."
"How about you?"
"I enjoy historical sites." He grinned.
"The older you get, the more you like being around anything that's older than you."
His wife chuckled and swatted him on the arm. "Leave the nice girl alone, you old turnip." The waiter arrived with armloads of food, and the couple turned their attention to their dinner. The food smelled amazing. What a great place! The tables were decked out with cute checkerboard tablecloths and topped with miniature bottles of olive oil and balsamic vinegar. My mouth watered. Our waiter, bless his heart, brought me a basket of warm rolls and a plate. "Grazie infinite," I told him, and I meant it. The heady fragrance of garlic and Asiago cheese had my mouth watering. The waiter excused his reach as he picked up the 2 bottles on the table. He poured golden oil and inky balsamic vinegar onto a large plate.
"This is for dipping the bread," he said, "unless you prefer butter."
I tore a chunk off the crispy roll and dabbed it on the plate. "When in Rome," I said with a smile. The waiter glanced at the empty chair across from me and began angling his body away from it, giving my absent date the cold shoulder. He told me about the restaurant's wine list. I hesitated. If Chet was as traditional in dating as he was at parenting, I'd be stepping on his toes if I ordered a bottle for both of us. He'd probably make some vague comment about me playing from a different handbook. I snorted at the imagined conversation. Who was he to question my parenting style? My daughter was a model citizen compared to Corvin, who was barely house-trained. I'll wait for my date, I told the waiter. Then I took out my frustration on the bread. When the waiter returned 10 minutes later with a second basket of steaming bread, he gave me a pitying look.
Shall we revisit the wine list?
It can't hurt. Plus, I need something to slow down my inhalation of bread. What would you recommend?
Perhaps a very small glass of the house red?
Oh, don't bother uncorking for a very small glass. I'll have a regular adult-sized glass, please, and grazie. He grinned.
Adult-sized. I like your style.
He returned with my wine and we exchanged pleasantries again. My date was going well. My date with the waiter, that was. If only he wasn't a tall, skinny boy of perhaps 19. I was on my second glass of wine and third basket of bread rolls when Chet finally returned with a brief, "Sorry about that." Work issues? Monsters climbing out of the ocean and attacking the town Godzilla style? Chet frowned.
What makes you say that?
I leaned in. Am I right? Is it sea monsters?
Of course not.
He glanced around.
I should have reserved one of the private rooms. We can't have much of a conversation here.
Sure we can. My aunt taught me a handy sound barrier spell. He shook his head.
It's too soon anyway. We can have this talk another time.
Now I'm dying to know what it is you won't tell me. I twirled my finger. Turn your head so you're not staring at me when I try this spell. You make me nervous. He frowned, but he did turn his head and look away, pretending to admire the fake stone walls. I murmured the incantation in witch tongue while interweaving my fingers the same way I'd seen Zinnia perform the spell earlier that day. My first attempt didn't do much except fizzle. Casting a new spell could feel like trying to light a wet match. It wouldn't work, but then you'd generate enough head to spark a reaction. I tried the incantation again, a little louder. Chet tilted his head and watched me out of the corner of his eye. I tried it a third time, this time with a hilariously bad Italian accent for no reason whatsoever. What would you know? The accent did the trick. The spell lit up and the sound barrier bubble formed around us. It was a brief visual flash that only I could see. We have our privacy now, I said proudly. Chet looked skeptical. I turned toward the elderly couple at the other table. Hey, tell me more about old things. Neither of them reacted.
Not bad,
Chet said. I pointed at Chet's phone, which was on the table face down. Now you can tell me what's going on. If it's not sea monsters, what is it? Big problems at head office for the X-Files?
I keep telling you we're not part of the X-Files mainly because they're fictional.
He peered into the empty wicker basket and frowned at the crumbs.
Enough about me, he said. I understand you were at the police station this morning for a follow-up on the Vanderzalm case?
Yes, and I think it went well. I suggested that Detective Bentley should worry less about our investigative methods and worry more about why his own department hadn't brought in Dorothy Tibbets for murder. He totally bought it. Chet nodded slowly. His eyes kept flicking around the room, ticking with movement every second like a clock.
And how is Detective Bentley? He's new in town and he doesn't know the ropes.
That pussycat? I batted my eyelashes. He was enthralled by my many charms. Chet cupped his forehead with his hand.
Zara, please tell me you did not cast one of your spells on the town's new detective.
Of course I didn't. But so what if I had? Isn't the whole point of being a witch that you get to use your powers? Chet winced.
Don't say that word in public.
Witch? I'll say what I want. We're inside an impervious shroud of privacy.
Impervious? Is that what you think?
He locked his eyes on mine, then he removed a seemingly normal pen from his pocket. He pressed the button to extend the nib. It clicked, just like a regular pen. With the click, the spell around us popped. The restaurant noise flooded in. Hey! I reached across our table, grasping for his magic-busting pen. He yanked it out of reach and tucked it away with a sly smile. No fair, I said. You saw how hard I worked on that spell. It took me forever and you poofed it away with one little click.
I certainly did,
he said proudly. Good for you. Now, what is that pen thing and how do I get one?
It's a multi-pulse click generator, and you don't get one.
He narrowed his eyes.
In fact, I shouldn't have even let you see it.
Tease. He glanced down at his menu.
How's Zoe fitting in with her new high school?
Zoe? Great. Her teachers love her.
How are her grades?
Pointy, I said, because the letter A is pointy.
She'll have plenty of options in life.
I agreed, and I went on to brag about my daughter's academic skills. While we talked about Zoe, I split my attention just enough to take another shot at the sound-muffling spell. This time, the spell worked on the second try. The bubble formed with a gentle shimmer, muting the restaurant noises while making our conversation more intimate. Chet couldn't see the shimmer, but he was able to hear the sound change. He shook his head at me, but he didn't pull out his fancy pen.
So much for a regular conversation,
he said. Regular is boring, I said. We're not regular people, so we don't have to be boring. Now, about the whole shifting thing, I'm sorry I asked you about mating, but you can't blame me for being curious. You don't have to tell me every gory detail, but come on, give a girl something. Through gritted teeth, he reluctantly said,
Shifters conduct all important business in human form.
Okay then, now we're getting somewhere. What about leisure time? For example, do you ever shift and go frolicking on the beach just to feel the sand on your wolf toes, maybe during a full moon? He seemed even more irritated than when I'd asked him about sex.
Zara, we don't pervert the laws of thermodynamics and the natural order of the universe for mere amusement.
I held my hands up. Yikes! Who said anything about perverting the laws of thermo-whatchamacallits? He reached into his jacket pocket and clicked the pen gadget without pulling it out. My spell popped. The surrounding noise returned with a flourish of musical guitar strums. A guitarist had taken to the restaurant's small stage to supply live music. The guitarist leaned in close to his microphone and sang, loudly and off-key. I cast the sound-dampening spell a third time with little effort. Practice was making me better. Aunt Zinnia did know best. Chet sighed as he reached into his pocket yet again.
You're going to make me wear out the charge.
He examined the pen and frowned.
Only one click left. I should save it for something important.
Why not leave my spell up and enjoy watching that singer without having to hear him? Chet put the pen away slowly.
I can try to enjoy myself, but I don't trust magic.
What do you mean you don't trust magic? I would think that transforming into a big hairy wolf would make someone a believer.
Not all magic is good or even reliable.
I leaned in. This is exactly the sort of thing I need to learn more about. Tell me about a time that magic was unreliable for you.
Just one time?
He smirked. I was so happy to see the hint of a smile that I beamed back at him. Yeah, tell me a story.
Not yet.
Chet looked down at his menu.
They make the most amazing seafood fettuccine here. Do you like seafood?
Seafood? If I see food, I eat it, so yes.
Great,
he said without any acknowledgement of my joke. Not that a pun deserves any encouragement, but still, tough crowd. The waiter arrived. I disarmed the spell and we ordered dinner, with both of us getting the seafood fettuccine. Our meals arrived and we began to eat. The nice older couple at the next table finished their meal and waved goodbye. Seated on our other side was a young couple who appeared to be on a first date. The girl was eating slowly, cutting her breaded chicken into tiny cubes. The boy kept asking her if everything was okay in between clearing his throat nervously. I watched as they shyly made eye contact, freezing in place until one of them blushed and looked away. I didn't have a crystal ball, not yet anyway, but I could see some awkward kissing in their immediate future. I looked across my table at my own date. At least he looked happier now that he was stuffing pasta into his face. Had I misjudged Chet's interest in me, or had something changed? 1 week earlier, we had been holding hands and making goo-goo eyes at each other. Granted, it had been an act, but Chet had gazed into my eyes with sincere, heartfelt adoration. It was the exact same look he was now giving his fettuccine. You really are loading up on those carbs, I said. I guess the magic takes a lot out of you, too. He kept eating. When the pasta was gone, Chet called for our waiter.
2 orders of tiramisu,
he said. The waiter looked at my barely touched dinner and gave me a sympathetic look.
Would you like to take that home?
Yes, please. He took the plate away. I reached for my wine and tossed back the last sip. Dessert arrived and Chet promptly inhaled his portion. Finally, I asked, "Are you in a rush to get somewhere?"
As a matter of fact, I do have to be somewhere tonight,
Chet said.
For work.
What about that thing you wanted to talk to me about? I made a dome shape with my hands. We're inside my personal cone of silence. Now talk.
I just wanted to thank you for being a good neighbor. That's all.
I leaned back and nodded. This work emergency you're dealing with, does it have anything to do with the Tobbs giving birth to a monster right now? His eyes widened. He quickly composed himself.
What do you know about that?
A witch has her ways. What are they having?
Chloe gave birth to a healthy baby boy.
No tentacles? His eyes bulged again.
Why would you say such a thing?
Maybe I'm the monster. I reached for my dessert fork and took a bite of the tiramisu. It was so heavenly, I moaned.
That's enough talk about monsters,
he said.
Chloe and her family have been through a lot recently, so naturally their anxieties were high, but everything worked out.
What's her power?
You wouldn't believe me if I told you.
Gorgon, I said. His jaw dropped. I pointed my fork at him. You need to work on your poker face. I was only fishing and you gave it up.
How did you know? Did a spirit communicate with you?
Not that I know of, I said, and I explained how I had chased Greeble Gorman down an alley earlier that day, only to overhear the Tobbs' private conversation, then see her hair undulating suspiciously.
Stay away from Gorman. He looks harmless, but he's not.
What is he, anyway? A forest sprite, an ugly pixie, a troll? Chet licked his lips and eyed my tiramisu.
Need some help with that?
I pushed the plate to halfway between us. You can have the rest if you tell me what Gorman is. He pushed the plate back to me.
I'm not authorized to disclose that information.
How about disappearing ink? What can you tell me about that?
Ink?
He blinked and raised his eyebrows.
I honestly don't know anything about that.
Zinnia said it's probably nothing and I should mind my own business.
Good advice. She's a wise woman.
Yup. I took a few big bites, finishing the dessert. Now tell me about this favor you want. He pulled his head back in surprise.
Who said anything about a favor?
I tilted my head to the side. Chet, I didn't fall off the apple tree yesterday. You want something. He looked down and rearranged his utensils for a moment before finally asking,
Has your aunt taught you anything about spirit walkers, astral projection?
You mean my spirit leaving my body? No, we haven't covered that one yet.
I meant...
He coughed to clear his throat.
Well, some of us are trying to locate a spirit that might be traveling around.
And there it is. You do need a favor. You want me to use my spirit charms to nab you a ghost.
Not exactly. A ghost is the spirit of a dead person. This person is still alive. Technically.
I'm listening. He coughed again.
That's all I've got. If you or someone in your family happens to come across something like that, promise you'll let me know.
What's this wandering spirit like? Boy or girl, big or small, old or young? He looked into my eyes.
You'll know when the time is right.
I'll know?
Yes. And when it happens, I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me for not telling you more.
Chapter 4. My date dropped me off at home before zooming away on his secret mission. I walked into my house, went straight to the kitchen, grabbed a fork, and started eating the leftover fettuccine. I paused to stare into the waxed paper box. The noodles were swirling around as though trying to spell something. It was my magic spilling out because my emotions were in turmoil. I stabbed the noodles with my fork until they were quite dead and resumed eating. And to think, earlier that evening I'd been looking forward to eating a meal that didn't come from a box. I got comfortable at the kitchen island. I tossed something on the counter where I could get a better look at it. To the untrained eyes, it was nothing more than a regular retractable ballpoint pen. Silly Chet had been so eager to give me the bum's rush out of his vehicle, he hadn't noticed me pickpocketing his multi-pulse click generator. I awoke on Sunday morning to silence. Too much silence. Something was wrong with either my ears or the world. Was it a spell? Earwax? A spell that increased the production of earwax? Who would even think of such a thing? I checked my ears with my pinky fingers. Everything felt normal enough. More importantly, I heard the rustling of my quilts and sheets. A spring in the mattress groaned. My ears were working fine. The only thing wrong with me was a dull ache in the center of my chest. Heartburn, caused by my late-night eating binge, which was in turn caused by the other kind of heartburn, the kind you feel when your date dumps you off at your front door without so much as a fist bump, let alone a romantic sunset kiss on the porch. But I wasn't going to mope around about it. My priorities in life were looking after my daughter, then myself, then my career, etc., with dating far down the list, somewhere in the vicinity of shoe shopping. Fun, but frivolous. I rolled over to check the time. My old alarm clock, which had received a few magical tosses recently, was sitting right where it had been the previous night. The screen was dark. Power outage. That explained the eerie silence. My portable air purifier wasn't making its pleasant white noise. The refrigerator downstairs wasn't humming. Was the power outage related to my possession of Chet's clicky pen? I hadn't clicked it the night before, not even once. He'd mentioned a limited number of charges and I didn't want to waste them. I pulled open the bedside table drawer. The clicky pen was right where I'd left it. I got up, dressed, and went to wake Zoe. "We've got a huge problem," I said. She pulled her pillow over her head. "Can't we go a whole week without having a huge problem?" "It's a non-magical problem. The power's out. I don't know if it's just the block or the whole town." She sat up and gave me a sleepy look. "Were you sleep toasting again?" She leaned forward to look deeply into my eyes. "Ms. van der Zalm, are you back?" "It's just me. I'm not possessed, I swear." I looked up at the ceiling and shook my head. "This is my life now," I muttered. "I have to constantly reassure my daughter that I'm not possessed." Zoe yawned. Just another normal day in the Riddle household. I nodded toward her bedroom door. "Come downstairs and help me find something wooden that you're not too attached to. I'll make a fire in the backyard and we can roast some frozen waffles over an open flame for breakfast. Plus marshmallows." "Color me intrigued." Zoe slid out of her bed, her pajama bottoms wrinkling up to her knees. She yawned again, stretched as she walked toward her window and pulled back the curtains. Directly across from her window was the Moore residence and the window for Corvin's bedroom. There he was, with his round face leaning in close to his window, his nose nearly touching the glass. His expression was utterly blank, like an appliance with the power unplugged. He saw Zoe and his eyes lit up, as though he had been waiting for her to wake up. Zoe lifted her wooden window open with a groan. A fragrant spring breeze came in as she waved. "Good morning, Corvin." His round, pale face split with a huge, gap-toothed grin that bordered on maniacal. He waved back frantically and wordlessly. "That kid is not right," I whispered to Zoe. "He grows on you," she said. "Like black mold." She leaned down to the open window and called to Corvin across the gap. "Any word on when the power's coming back on?" Instead of answering, he backed away from the window and disappeared from sight, which didn't surprise me at all. With Corvin, I had learned to expect the unexpected. The light inside his bedroom flicked off and on repeatedly. "It's Morse code," Zoe said excitedly. I patted her on the shoulders. "Not so fast, Detective Overthinker. He's got light, which means he's got power, which means maybe I should have opened those orange envelopes from the Wisteria Electric Company. Zoe looked at me, then rolled her eyes so hard that her disdain afflicted her entire body, and she had to collapse back onto her bed limply, wailing, "Mom!" Which, incidentally, is my second least favorite rendition of my title. My absolute least favorite rendition is the whining, Luckily for me, Zoe never sang that tune, but I've heard it often enough in shopping malls, and it turns my blood to ice every time. I looked over to see Corvin's big eyes staring back at me. I wonder if he ever wailed for his absent mother. Had the boy even known his mother long enough to throw temper tantrums in crowded malls? Chet wouldn't tolerate tantrums, not for a minute. As I wondered about the kid's past, he slowly shook his head. Could he read minds? He smiled again, knowingly. Well, maybe it was for the best that my romance with Corvin's father was dead on arrival. I could still help with the weird kid plenty, but just as a neighbor and without having to explain his behavior to teachers. I waved at Corvin and smiled. Then I slowly backed away from the window, still waving. Corvin and all his creepiness could be wondered about any time. I had to get the electricity running again, or else learn how to make cold brew coffee, and the latter did not appeal to me at all. Zoe and I got through our Sunday without power and rejoiced at dinner time when the lights and buzzing appliances finally came back on. My suspicion that the outage might have something to do with the unopened orange envelopes turned out to be correct. Yay me! On Monday at work, I told my pink-haired coworker about my problems with the hard-bottom, by-the-rules billing administrator at the Wisteria Electric Company. Frank Wonder responded to my anguished tale with equal parts sympathy and sarcasm. "That must have been very difficult for you," he said in a mock-soothing tone. "How dare those jerks at the electric company demand money in exchange for services?" I glanced up from the book return bin to shoot him a look, crossing my eyes and sticking out my tongue. "Careful you're not making that face when a clock chimes, or it'll get stuck that way." Innocently, I asked, "Is that what happened to you?" "Ha ha." Frank ruffled his pink hair and screwed his face up in a grotesque mask. "The spirits of the deep do not take your mocking lightly." I quaked with mock horror. Satisfied, he walked away to go help a library patron with a stack of House of Hallows paperbacks. I sorted through the returned books while listening with amusement to Frank's conversation with the patron. They argued for 20 minutes over whether the popular fantasy series would ever be finished. The author was notoriously slow about delivering manuscripts to his publisher, and dying hadn't helped speed things up at all. The irony was that the constant complaining by fans was part of the reason for the series' success. Kvetching about the slow author was a favorite pastime for book lovers on the internet. Two people arguing often attracted a third onlooker who became curious enough to start reading the series, only to be left without a conclusion and turn into a complainer as well. And so House of Hallows spread. Plus, they were great books. After an hour of lifting stacks of books, my arms felt like overcooked spaghetti. Monday morning's returns are the heaviest because we're closed most Sundays. Ordinarily, we'd have one of the library's entry-level workers do the task. FYI, the title for the library's entry-level position is page, not to be confused with the pages of a book. Back in medieval times, a youth being trained for knighthood would also be called a page. I always liked that explanation and how it implied that becoming a librarian was similar to becoming a knight. That Monday morning, I wasn't patient enough to wait for one of our pages to come in for their shift. I was hoping to find a specific book. Ziggity! There it was, at the bottom, cheekily hiding under a coffee table book about knitting. I checked around me to make sure nobody was watching and then flipped through the rockstar memoir. The pages looked normal. There were no blocks of text missing. The disappearing ink must have returned since Saturday when I had last seen the book at the ice cream parlor. I flipped through the pages once more, and then again, slowly. Frank, who had crept up behind me, said,
"The good stuff starts on page 51.
I slammed the book shut guiltily. I wasn't reading this filth. Frank raised his eyebrows, which were probably as gray as any 55-year-old's, but had been dyed pink to match his hair.
"Sure you weren't,"
he said, flashing his super bright, nearly blue teeth. I was just flipping through because I thought I saw one of those stop-motion cartoons in the margins, but I was mistaken. He gave me a skeptical look.
"Zara Riddle, you've got a guilty conscience about something. I wonder about you sometimes. How's it going with your beau?"
I sighed. We are officially crossing Chet's name off the beau list. His beau days are over. That beau is a no-go. A no-beau. Frank shrugged one shoulder.
"True love takes time. When you get older and wiser like me, you'll learn to be more patient. Did he at least take you somewhere expensive on Saturday?"
He took me to Grazie.
"That sounds romantic. Their stone walls are about as genuine as my sister's cleavage and her diamond earrings, but they do have good lighting. What happened? Did you ask too many questions about the boy's mother? Talk about your old flames?"
Not at all. I was on my best behavior. I added, by which I mean best behavior for Zara Riddle. I'm not the most conservative conversationalist.
"No kidding."
I swear my intentions were pure. I just wanted to get to know him as a person and not just a handsome face. I couldn't tell Frank I had been too inquisitive about intimate shifter business. Frank didn't know about shifters, let alone that I was a witch. But I did go on to explain how Chet had taken a phone call, been evasive, and then given me a smooch-free send-off. Frank looked pensive.
"I wonder, what is that silly boy thinking? You're a confident professional woman who's a real kick in the pants. I don't want to inflate your head too much, but your presence has certainly livened things up around here. If Chet can't see what a catch you are, he's a fool."
I smiled my thanks. You're too sweet.
"Sweeter than sweet tea, gorgeous." He winked. "I'm sure your date wasn't entirely bad."
Oh, it was. The man might be a pastasexual. I described Chet's apparent bliss over his plate of fettuccine. There was so much slurping, it sounded like a bad teen make-out party.
"At least you know the way to his heart. Cook him up one of your fabulous gourmet dinners like you did at that party you threw."
He was referring to my dinner party where I'd cooked multiple courses, assisted by the ghost of Winona Vanderzalm. I suppose I could whip him up something involving bacon. Guys do love bacon.
"Make spaghetti carbonara," Frank said. "1 plate, 2 forks."
I pouted theatrically. I probably couldn't tear his attention away from the noodles.
"You sound frustrated."
Frank pointed to the memoir in my hands.
"This explains why you're indulging in hedonism this morning."
Nothing beats a trashy beach read.
Flip forward to the hotel suite action on page 221.
His expression turned serious.
"If you do try that one at home, I recommend a safety harness. You can pick up the equipment you need at any mountain climbing store."
He batted his eyelashes.
"Or so I hear."
Frank Wonder, you are my personal hero.
"I never get tired of hearing that."
He backed away. In a regular speaking voice, which registered as loud within the quiet library, he said,
"I'll leave you to your important librarian research, Ms. Riddle."
Then he cupped his hand around his mouth and whisper-yelled,
"Page 100 is also good."
I checked the pages Frank recommended. The words were all there. Oh boy, were they all there. After some reading that made my cheeks flush, I flipped through the book a few more times. Why had the book been erasing itself on Saturday? I couldn't have imagined it. Hipster Chick had also been frustrated, so she must have experienced the missing text as well. I closed the book and scanned it into the computer. The patron who had last checked it out was named Margaret Mills. That struck me as unusual. Hipster chick didn't look like someone who'd be named Margaret. It was a perfectly lovely name, but the name Margaret peaked in popularity in the 20s and had been on a gradual decline ever since. What did this new information mean? Why would ink disappear and then return again? I wished my aunt hadn't confiscated the bakery's business card. The air conditioning kicked on with a vengeance, making me shiver. I grabbed the heavy cardigan from the back of my chair and pulled it on over my light cardigan. Librarian secret? There's no such thing as too many cardigans. Frank rolled by with the book cart.
Nice look, he said. You really can't have too many cardigans.
So true. I rubbed my arms. Darn air conditioner.
The air conditioner is not on.
Then why is it so chilly? He leaned in and studied my face.
Your lips are blue. Are you feeling okay?
Just cold. I pushed the chair back and stood. I'd better get the old blood circulating. I shivered. Are you sure the air conditioning is off?
Very sure.
His eyes sparkled.
If you're feeling cold spots, maybe it's a ghost.
I looked around warily. Maybe it was the ghost that Chet's mysterious crew was in search of. Chapter 5. By midday, I had stopped checking over my shoulder for ghosts. The cold spots weren't bothering me, not since I had donned a third cardigan. Plus, I had a brand new mission. My recent misadventures with the Wisteria Electric Company had highlighted a lack of literacy on my part. Not book literacy, but financial literacy. This was not a new problem. For most of my adult life, my idea of an investment strategy had been to buy brand-name cereal boxes that I refilled with cheaper fare from the bulk bins. I'd never worried too much about money before, trusting that I would always find a way to support my family. And I did support us, albeit not in a way anyone would describe as luxurious. But everything was different now. The stakes were higher. Now that I had my house, my beloved 3-story Gothic Victorian with the triple lancet windows, I had something to lose. The power shutoff was a wake-up call. I had to get on top of my finances. My new job paid a good wage, and I did have the funds to pay all my bills, but I had made the mistake of mixing up the water bill with the electric bill. I'd never lived somewhere with metered water before, so when I paid the Department of Water, I thought the bill included my electricity. Why not combine the two? Wouldn't it make more sense to send a single employee out to check 2 meters at the same time instead of sending 2 different people? The clerk I spoke to at the Wisteria Electric Company did not appreciate my suggestions about how the town could reduce expenses. She just wanted my credit card number and the chance to chastise me for not opening their orange envelopes. In order to avoid such unpleasantness in the future, I would need to improve my financial literacy. Luckily for me, I knew of a place where all the collective wisdom of the modern world was available for free. No, I don't mean Wikipedia, though it is a close second. I visited the personal finance section of the library on a personal mission. In case you're ever in such a need yourself, the books are under Social Sciences, Economics, Finance, Not Set, Miscellany and Personal Finance, Personal Finance. The Dewey Decimal Call number is 332.024. As I browsed the titles, I sensed someone enter the aisle behind me. The person was moving quietly, their footfalls soundless, but their presence was given away by the subtle change in the aisle's acoustics. I assumed it was Frank sneaking up on me. I tensed my body and prepared to twist around suddenly and scare him before he scared me. Maybe he would shriek, setting off a chain reaction of dropped books and startled cries throughout the library. The pranks that Frank and I got up to were exactly the sort of thing librarians aren't supposed to do, which made it even more fun. He drew closer and closer. I pretended to be fascinated by the nonfiction books on the shelf before me. The newer ones had fun, catchy titles that made household budgeting sound like a wild new hobby. All of them claimed to be the only money book you need. A book with a snazzy purple spine caught my eye. The blurb on the front declared it the most personal guide to personal finance ever written. How personal could this guide be? Did they have a chapter about sending your brilliant child off to an expensive college that you couldn't afford? I cast the page-finding spell Zinnia had taught me. It was a subtle spell I could cast in the presence of regular people, so I didn't worry about whoever was behind me seeing anything magical. I rifled through the pages, and the book magically stuck open on a chapter. Should you send your brilliant kid to an Ivy League college that you can't afford? I smiled. Nicely played, book. Frank still hadn't made his move behind me. The back of my neck itched with anticipation. I selected an armload of books and commented out loud for Frank's benefit. I hope there aren't any ghosts sneaking up on me who might scare me into screaming and dropping all these books. He didn't respond. Was I imagining things? I whipped around and found myself facing a man who was not Frank. Not unless Frank had suddenly gone semi-transparent. Like Frank, this man was mid-50s and of average height and build. Unlike Frank, he had normal gray hair and was as see-through as a foggy pane of glass. Ghost. I'd never faced a ghost before. I'd felt the presence of one and even been possessed, but I had never seen one. What does one say to a ghost? My librarian instincts kicked in. Sir, can I help you with something? The semi-transparent man looked down at the books in my arms and then back up at my face. Sir, are you looking for a specific type of book? He shook his head. No. Are you lost? No response. Do you know you're dead? His eyes widened in surprise. He recovered and laughed silently. He mouthed what looked like, I'm not dead. If you're not dead, then you must be that spirit walker my friend is looking for. He tilted his head in confusion. By spirit walker, I mean someone who's doing astral projection. I'm no expert, but the gist of it is that some people believe they can leave their bodies and go floating around. Sometimes people claim it happened to them during surgery. They go in to get their gallbladder removed, then they wake up and tell their family about the things that they couldn't have seen or heard because they were unconscious on the operating table. He nodded in recognition. So you've heard of astral projection, and you know what it is? Another nod. And this is what you're doing right now? He laughed silently. Did that mean yes or no? How did you do it? Did you drink a special tea made with magical herbs? Was transcendental meditation involved, or mushrooms? Is your body in suspended animation somewhere? He shook his head and waved his hands as if to say I was on the wrong track entirely. Fine. If you're not spirit walking, then answer this. Where is your body? He patted himself and looked at me like I was the ding-dong. His ghostly body must have felt real enough to him with his ghostly hands. Sir, I'm sorry to break the news, but you are currently floating around without your body. Don't panic. He looked anything but panicked. You're basically a ghost. Still no panic. Stay right here and I'll call my friend. Some people are looking for you. They work for a special organization that deals with stuff like this. The man's eyes suddenly widened, this time in fear. He held his finger up to his lip, then mouthed, You can't tell anyone what I'm doing. It's a secret. Well, it won't be a secret for long if you keep spirit walking around town all semi-transparent. Another confused look. Have you seen yourself? Go to a mirror. He frowned and shook his head as though I was the crazy one. Do you even know you're in the library? He looked at the books in my arms, up at the shelves surrounding us, and back into my eyes. The expression on his face brightened. He pointed at the books and then at me, a question being implied. Yes, these are for me, I said. Personal finance books. I'm not keen on cooking over an open fire in my backyard, so I'm attempting to educate myself in the mysterious ways of money. I waved a hand. There was a whole thing with the Wisteria Electric Company. Smiling, he pointed to his chest. Then he thumped his chest proudly with both hands. You're some sort of expert on money? He nodded and made a pinching gesture with both hands. Great! You need help and I need help. We can both help each other. As soon as the words were out of my mouth, I regretted the offer. What was I getting myself into? My sense of smell hadn't returned to normal since the sleep toasting electrocutions. But the semi-transparent man had heard my offer and it was too late for take-backsies. His foggy form wavered, and then, there's really no delicate way to put this, he turned into a wisp of smoke and disappeared up my nostril. My left nostril. Immediately, I could feel him inside my head, banging around like a hungry house guest looking for the cereal bowls. Great. I'm possessed. Again. Chapter 6. I woke up on a beanbag chair in the grumpy corner. The grumpy corner was not some cleverly named coffee shop populated with tattooed hipsters. It was a comfortable spot inside the library's staff lounge where we hardworking librarians, assistants, and pages could give ourselves a time out as needed. Being preternaturally perky in personality, I'd never had to take a nap in the grumpy corner before. But there I was, with stray styrofoam beads stuck to my face. How had I gotten there? The last thing I remembered was standing in a book aisle holding an armful of financial literacy books and offering to help a semi-transparent man. Then he had turned into a wisp of smoke and swirled up into his own personal grumpy corner, which was somewhere inside my skull. I made a fist and rapped tentatively on the top of my head. Hello? Are you still in there? No response came. I couldn't detect anyone else rattling around up there, but ghosts could be flaky. My previous tenant had come and gone as she pleased, helping me cook complicated recipes when it suited her. My aunt declared, or should I say diagnosed me, as being spirit charmed. Every witch has a specialty, and that was mine. I knocked on my skull again, this time on the back of my head. Are you comfortable, sir?
Not really,
answered a man's voice. Except it wasn't the ghost. It was Frank, who I hadn't noticed sitting at the staff lunch table, eating his mid-afternoon snack of teddy bear-shaped graham crackers. I stared at him as I tried to get my bearings. What's going on?
You asked if I was comfortable, he said. Then I said not really, because these vintage corduroy trousers keep riding up.
He leaned to the side on his chair and wiggled his cords down. Vintage clothes never fit right, I said. People had different proportions back in the day, and they were shorter.
Not me. These vintage cords have been aging in my own storage locker, so the only person I can blame is myself.
He looked down at the teddy bear-shaped cookie in his hand.
Or maybe I should blame these cookies. Over the last 30 years, I must have gained at least 2.5 pounds.
He shook his head.
Disgraceful.
You've only gained 2.5 pounds over 30 years? They should get you to a lab to study your DNA. He laughed.
Who? Mad scientists?
Something like that. How can you be so fit when you eat cookies every day? He shrugged.
There must be something about this town. Haven't you noticed there's something strange about Wisteria? The sky is a deeper blue, the grass is greener, and everyone here is so healthy.
I nodded in agreement. We live in a magical town where all the children are above average. He narrowed his eyes.
What do you mean, magical?
I shrugged. Just joking around. I wished I could tell him about my powers, but it wouldn't be safe. History hasn't been kind to witches. Other people haven't been kind either. Back in the olden days, they didn't burn witches just because they'd run out of dry firewood. I heaved myself up from the beanbag chair and walked over to the sink to get a glass of water. How long was I asleep? I have zero memory of coming in here to lie down. Frank snorted.
If I were you, I'd claim amnesia too.
Have I been misbehaving? I played it off as a joke, but I did wonder what I had done while possessed.
You were so mean to that patron,
Frank said.
The poor old gal just wanted a book about the best designer shopping destinations in the world, and you gave her a lecture about social responsibility and saving for her future.
I did?
She was practically in tears when I took over and shooed you in here for a time out.
Sounds like I had, don't say a ghost possession moment, a low blood sugar moment. Was she really upset? Now I feel terrible. I gasped. I'm still in my probationary period. Is Kathy going to fire me?
Don't worry, I covered for you. I told her it was your lady time.
He made a gagging face. Frank, that's inappropriate.
I'm inappropriate?
He arched one pink eyebrow.
Is it appropriate for a certain woman who recently had her electricity cut off to lecture other people about money?
That wasn't me, it was a ghost? Low blood sugar. He pushed his remaining cookies across the table and nodded for me to join him. 5 minutes later, the head librarian, Kathy Carmichael, came in breathing heavily. Her forehead was shiny and one of her medium brown curls was stuck to the sweat. Her round glasses were sliding down her narrow, sharp nose. Frank and I exchanged a look. Kathy breathed heavily whenever we got a new batch of crafting books in, or when she was irate about the library's budget being threatened. I asked her, "Everything okay, boss?" I'd hoped her hyperventilating wasn't about something I'd done while possessed. I suspected the ghost in my head, Mr. Finance Wizard, for a lack of an actual name, might have been talking to her with my mouth. How could I explain that, let alone prevent it from happening again? Kathy took a big breath as she pushed her glasses up her owlish nose. Just when you think you've seen every trick in the book, there's a new one. Frank clapped his hands. Did some genius invent a whole new type of craft? No. Frank slumped his posture. More budget cuts? This is bad, but not that bad. She laid 3 hardcovers on the table next to Frank. Some vandal has been ruining our materials. At first I thought it was just one book, but now 2 more vandalized titles have come to my attention. Frank looked down at the books with interest. He carefully wiped the cookie crumbs off his fingers before leafing through the top book. I watched quietly from my chair. I had a strong premonition he'd find erased pages, but I didn't want to tip my hand.
What am I looking for? These blank spots?
He looked up at her.
Someone must have gotten overzealous about removing pencil marks.
I've already tested the pages in the repair alcove, Kathy said. I tried all the cleaners we use, from Moats and Bocker's Liftoff to Absorbine's vulcanized natural rubber, and even the stinky stuff. None of them lifted the ink. This wasn't done by one of us. Frank rotated the book to give me a glimpse of a page missing half its words. I nodded like someone who was seeing such a thing for the first time.
These might be misprints, he said. This happens at the printer whenever something falls on the page between the paper and the ink.
Not in this case, Kathy said, still breathing heavily. This isn't one isolated patch. The vandalism runs throughout the books, and it goes line by line straight across. Whoever did this was very deliberate. Frank scratched his head.
It could have been shredded paper caught on a gust of wind at the printing house. My money is still on the misprint.
But no 2 of those books came from the same printing house. This was deliberate vandalism. Frank looked skeptical.
Can you even call this vandalism? They haven't drawn or scribbled anything in here. It's just been erased.
Kathy said, It's either vandalism or censorship. Who would do such a thing? She softly hooted, Who? I decided that this was the point in which a normal, non-witch librarian who didn't already know about the disappearing ink might join the conversation. Censorship? I asked. What makes you say that, Kathy? Is there a specific type of content that's being erased? She threw her hands in the air.
Not that I can figure out, Frank answered for her, and I'm a wizard at word puzzles.
I reached for one of the books and took a closer look. Unlike the hardcover at the ice cream parlor, the ink didn't lift away before my eyes. Part of me was disappointed. I checked the front cover for clues. It was a nonfiction title about deck building with local materials. How random. And the passages that had been erased were seemingly random as well. Kathy finally got her breathing under control. Who would censor a book about deck building? Frank stuck one finger in the air. Aha!
I've detected a pattern.
He put the books in a row and pointed at each in turn.
Deck building with local materials, arts and crafts with regular household objects, and the third one is an artsy coffee table book about found notes. Do you see the connection?
Kathy pushed her glasses up on her nose again, but said nothing. I wagered a guess. The common theme is recycling?
Exactly,
Frank said.
2 points for Zara.
He tossed me 2 of his graham cookies. He tossed some to Kathy, but the teddies bounced off her cardigan and hit the floor. She didn't even seem to notice. Wow, Kathy really was upset if she had gone cookie blind. I asked Frank, now what? Do we start an investigation? Look for someone who has an axe to grind about recycling or coffee table books written by bloggers? He laughed.
You're funny, Zara. What we do is we order replacements for these books, write off the damaged ones, and hope our troublemaker loses interest.
But don't you think it's strange? He raised his pink eyebrows at me.
Stranger things have happened.
Kathy, who had grown quiet, spoke as though in a daze. Recycling, she said softly. Wick. Wick? This is a message, Kathy said to Frank, picking up and shaking one of the books. A coded message. He gave her a serious look and a quick single nod. They both looked at me. I kept my expression neutral. They both understood what she meant by Wick, whereas I was new there and did not.
You could go pay Wick a visit, Frank said. It would certainly speed up the whole thing if he is up to something.
He patted the erased books.
The longer we let his game play out, the more expensive it gets on our holdings.
Kathy wrinkled her nose. But he's always been so mean to me. Can you come with me, Frank? Frank smiled in my direction.
I think Zara's the most in need of fresh air, so you should take her. I insist.
I'll go, I said. Kathy rocked from side to side and tucked her sweaty curl behind her ear. I don't know, she said. It is the middle of the day.
Just go, Frank said. You're no good to us here when you're like this. Take it out on Wick.
She rocked some more.
Go!
Frank made a shoe gesture.
I'll hold down the fort here, but don't take too long or we might change us over from the Dewey Decimal System to a new system using spine colors. I can see it now. We'll have blue shelves and green shelves and red shelves. It'll be so refreshing. Not to mention a visual masterpiece.
Kathy didn't laugh. Librarians usually laugh at jokes about reorganizing by anything that isn't the Dewey Decimal System. It's what passes for humor when we're not talking about smuggling in wine or cats or electric space heaters. This business with the disappearing words had the head librarian riled up.
Frank said, "You two can head out right now. I swear on a stack of all our holy books that I won't get into too much mischief."
Kathy blinked at me, her light brown eyes shining brightly behind her round glasses. "I'm ready to go when you are." "I'm as ready as I'll ever be." I grabbed my purse and followed her toward the side door that led to the staff parking area. Hey, Mr. Finance Wizard, I thought to the new entity in my head. Do you happen to know anything about library books erasing themselves? No response. Just a coincidence that you showed up here today? If there had been crickets living in my head, I would have heard nothing but cricket sounds. Chapter 7. I was in the parking lot, opening the passenger side door of Kathy's car, when I noticed someone walking by. It was the hat-wearing young woman from the ice cream parlor. Hipster chick. She had a large tote bag on her shoulder. She walked toward the library's front entrance while withdrawing a hardcover book from the tote bag. It was the rock star memoir I had seen on Saturday. I smacked myself on the forehead. I should have known better. The book I had looked through that morning must have been another copy we had in circulation. But of course, we often carried multiples of popular new titles. I should have been more confident in my hunch that hipster chick wasn't named Margaret. So far, I was a lousy witch detective. The door of Kathy's car opened with a rusty squeak. It was an older model Honda, brown and pocked with bubbles of rust. She had given me a ride before, so I was over the initial shock of the vehicle's shabby appearance. She could afford a better car, but this one still ran, got reasonable gas mileage, plus she found it comfortable. Her nest on wheels, she called it. I climbed into the passenger side. There was some clutter on the duct-taped seat that Kathy yanked away just in time. Yarn and a crochet hook. "Oh, fluffernuts," she exclaimed. I guess I should look before I sit. "Sorry about that, Zara." She tossed the yarn into the back seat where it landed on other balls of yarn. "Kathy, why do you have yarn and a crochet hook on the passenger seat? Don't tell me you crochet and drive." "That would be illegal," she said, which wasn't the same as saying no. She threw the car into gear and we were off to see a man named Wick who was, according to Kathy, always playing games on top of being mean to her. Who could be mean to Kathy? Who? Kathy drove us past the outskirts of town, then turned onto an unpaved road. We passed rolling meadows, farm fields, low fences made of weathered wood, and tall fences made of netted wire designed to keep wildlife on one side. It was a gorgeous day for a drive, with blue skies above and warm breezes all around. Kathy's ancient Honda had no air conditioning, so we rolled the windows down. Kathy was quiet, her eyes on the road ahead and her mind on something that made her scrunch up her face every couple of minutes. Her brown curly hair swirled around her face, occasionally getting stuck on the arms of her glasses. I tried not to stare, but I kept sneaking peeks at Kathy and her sharp-tipped nose. I had no reason to believe she had magical powers. No reason other than the fact that she looked so much like an owl. How could she not be a bird? If you watch any sort of cartoon show with animals as characters, the librarian is always an owl, and Kathy was the head librarian. Anthropomorphism is the ascription of human attributes to non-humans. Zoomorphism is the ascription of animal attributes to humans. No, there won't be a test on this later. I wondered if Wisteria caused zoomorphism in its residents. Kathy reminded me of an owl. Frank, with his skinny legs and hot pink hair, reminded me of a flamingo. Then there was little Corvin, who reminded me of a raven. I also had a theory he was the blue jay who had spoken to me in my backyard the day Zoe and I had moved into the house. But I couldn't exactly go around casting spells to make shifters transform into their animal forms just to satisfy my curiosity. Could I? The breeze coming in through the windows blew my red hair into my face. The sunshine filtering through made the strands of hair glow orange, right at the same moment I was wondering what animal I resembled. The image of a red fox popped into my head. Scientific name, Vulpes vulpes. If I could shift into any form, a red fox made the most sense because of their beautiful fur, playfulness, and ability to adapt to new environments. And also because the females are called vixens. How cute is that? An earthy scent distracted me from my red fox daydreams. "Oh, fluffernuts," Kathy said. "Roll your window up." The old car didn't have power windows, so we both rolled up our windows manually. Even with the windows closed, a smell permeated the car's interior. Smell might be too mild of a word. It was a stench. We passed through a pair of tall iron gates and into the Wisteria Sanitation Management Station. The title was fancy municipal code for the dump. Kathy looked over at me. "Aren't you glad Frank volunteered you for this mission?" I pinched my nose. "So glad." "It's not too bad.
The wind usually blows the other way."
She returned her attention to the road and turned down a side road. "This is the kind of bad smell you can taste in the back of your mouth."
"Oh, Zara, is it really that bad?"
"I guess my sense of smell has become more sensitive since becoming a witch, since moving to a small town with such clean air."
"That's probably it," she said. "Then again, I've raised 3 boys who played every sport they could. They crammed all their sweaty equipment into duffel bags, which they left to marinate for days at a time, so my sense of smell might not be as refined as some people's."
I dropped my hand from my nose. "Oh, I've smelled things," I said dramatically. I didn't know what I meant by that, but I do have a tendency to keep talking when I'm around people who are clearly stressed. After a moment, I asked, "So why are we out here? What's the deal with Wick?"
"All you need to know is he's a quarrelsome man who baits women into arguments. I believe the term is gaslighting. He's a gaslighter."
"And is that gas methane?" I waved my hand under my nose. "I definitely detect some methane in the local environment." Kathy's mouth relaxed into the smallest of smiles.
"It's probably a wild goose chase that we're heading out here, but I've got to trust my intuition, and my intuition is telling me he's up to something."
"What do you mean, intuition? Have you got special powers?" I let out a laugh, pretending to be joking, even though I was truly fishing.
"Some gifts run in my family. My grandmother, Grandma Kay, would get feelings about things, and more often than not, it would turn out she was right. I haven't predicted half the things she did, but I swear I feel her near me."
I glanced over my shoulder into the back seat. There was no grandmotherly ghost, just containers filled with twine, fuzzy pipe cleaners, scrapbooks, scissors, and several types of glue, including glitter glue. When I turned my head back from the back seat, I noticed Kathy was staring at me. Had she seen me jerk my head back to look for Grandma Kay? I smiled at her. When in doubt, smile. She turned back to the road.
"How about you, Zara? Are there any special gifts that run in your family?"
"Gifts?"
"Your aunt is a very special lady."
Did Kathy know about the witchcraft in the Riddle family? If she didn't know, she was doing a great job of making me think she did. But I wasn't going to spill anyone's secrets, so I played dumb. "Zinnia? She sure is a special lady. And come to think of it, she did give me a gift. A lamp. But it was too, special for the living room, so I let Zoe keep it in her room, where it's nice and safe."
"A lamp?" She moved. "Floral?"
"Yes. Why? Do you know something about it?" She pursed her lips knowingly.
"Just a lucky guess."
We turned a corner, and I saw our destination. The road we had been driving on ended at a corrugated metal building.
"Here we are."
Kathy shifted the car into park, but didn't turn off the engine. I asked, "What's the plan, boss? Are you going to hit him with the books until he confesses?"
"I wish. First, I'm going to ask for help. Wick is the town's top ink and paint expert."
"In addition to running the dump?"
"He's in charge of all sorts of things, from garbage pickups to street cleaning. But most importantly, he's the graffiti removal guy. If you ever see graffiti on town property, there's a hotline you can use to call Wick. He hates graffiti. He's got all sorts of chemicals for removing it."
"And you think he's got some chemicals that removes the ink from pages? And that he's been erasing books to give you a hard time?" Kathy made an anguished noise.
"It sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud, but you've got to know one thing. Wick is a genius. His mind doesn't work like yours or mine."
"Okay." I looked at the metal building. An empty beer bottle was leaning in the grass next to the corner of the building. I recognized the label from somewhere, but couldn't place where. Must be a local brewery. Kathy turned off the car engine, and I pushed open her door with a rusty squeak.
"When we get in there, don't let on that you know anything."
"Pretend I know nothing?" I grinned. "Easy peasy lemon squeezy." We both got out of the brown Honda. Kathy opened the hatchback, grabbed the 3 library books, and handed them to me to carry in. We headed toward the waste station's office. The building itself was cute, like an A-framed cottage, but made of galvanized metal. I'd seen houseboats with a similar structure, right down to the round window positioned at the peak. Kathy knocked on the door. A man's voice came booming from exterior speakers like the voice of Gandalf. "You may enter." Kathy turned to me, rolling her eyes. "Vinny loves being dramatic." Vinny? The name rang a bell. I took another look at the beer bottle, which rang another bell. A few weeks ago, my aunt had phoned someone whose name had sounded to me like Viv or Finn or Winnie. Then she had had this friend, who had been described as a cleaner, search through my house for dangers. This person also put up some protective wards. He'd left behind a couple of empty beer bottles with the same label as the one in front of the building. Zinnia's cleaner friend must have been Vinny Wick. He knew my secret, and I was about to meet him. Chapter 8. We entered the metal shack. Inside, on the other side of a desk, was a man who did not match my expectations of someone running a municipal landfill. This guy resembled a movie mob boss or the top man in charge of a casino. He was about 50, clean-shaven and wide-shouldered. His hair was shiny black, slicked back and receding on the temples. His eyes were dark and hooded, his nose narrow like a hawk's, and his teeth were small and crooked but very white. Despite the warmth of the day, he wore a lightweight dark sweater over a collared shirt. Shoot me for jumping to stereotypes, but I'd expected someone with a gray beard and a cigarette dangling from cracked lips, the human equivalent of an old seagull. When we'd entered, he had been seated on the other side of a sizable oak desk facing the door. He didn't get up when he saw us, nor did he invite us to sit, probably because he only had 1 extra chair for visitors and there were 2 of us. The metal structure's interior was a single room of about 300 square feet. What it lacked in guest seating, it made up for in filing cabinets. The walls were lined with at least a dozen of them. Something about the alignment of the filing cabinets struck me as odd. They were a little too perfectly straight, like a computer rendering. Kathy looked at me while waving to the man. "Meet Vincent Wick," she said. "Hello," I said. Vincent Wick gave her a sneering smile, flashing only the top row of his gleaming white teeth.
"I see you brought backup, Kathy. You don't trust yourself to be alone with me."
Kathy took off her glasses and squinted at him. "We're here on official library business." Her voice quivered slightly.
"If you say so."
He scanned me from head to toe.
"And that's why you've brought one of your fellow book pushers."
Book pushers? I squared my shoulders. I've been called worse. His prolonged stare made me uncomfortable. I glanced over at the large picture window, which perfectly framed the dump site in a way that made it appear beautiful. From a distance, all the colored bits were like confetti. He said,
"Beautiful, isn't it?"
Was he reading my mind? Was that something cleaners did? I kept my eyes on the view. It's more colorful than I expected.
"It's colorful now, but you're looking at future black gold,"
he said.
"What once was waste will become valuable fertilizer."
He paused.
"From chaos and decay springs life anew."
I turned to face him, smiling sweetly. "Is that poetry you're reciting, Mr. Wick? Or do you spend a lot of time staring out this window and having deep thoughts about garbage?" Kathy snorted. I glanced over to find her furiously cleaning her glasses, using a spray-on product from her purse. Cleaning her glasses was a process that could take Kathy several minutes. She'd asked me to play quiet and let her take the lead with Vincent Wick, but she wasn't saying much. Wick asked,
"And what is your name, dear?"
I stared into the dark, hooded eyes. "Don't you already know my name? You seem to know a lot of things. You knew I was a book pusher." He glanced down at my waist briefly.
"Because you're wearing 3 cardigans, my dear."
I narrowed my eyes at him. "You were in my house. I know you were, but do you know that I know? Are you enjoying this game?" "My name is Zara Riddle," I said.
"Ah."
He tilted his head back.
"Zinnia's daughter or sister or something like that."
"Very good, almost convincing." "I'm her niece."
"How are you settling into our fine town? Are the restaurants to your liking? Grazie serves the best Italian, but you already knew that."
He knew where I'd been on Saturday night. He'd been spying on me, and now he wanted to throw me off balance. Boy, was he in for a disappointment. I'd already sucked a ghost up my nose that day. I wasn't going to get rattled by him name-dropping a restaurant. Meanwhile, Kathy continued cleaning her glasses. I stepped toward the desk and put my hand on the corner, encroaching on the man's space. "Mr. Wick, Kathy tells me you're an expert on ink removal."
"Did she now?"
He kept his eyes on mine.
"I'm sure Miss Carmichael has told you all sorts of wicked things about me."
"She told me you're the ink expert, which is why we've brought you these." I dropped the trio of books onto his desk. I opened the top one to a page that was missing 10% of its text. He looked down his hawk nose at the page.
"Someone has vandalized this book,"
he said. "Someone or something?" His eyes flicked up.
"Something? Whatever do you mean?"
The guy probably knew the ink was being erased by magical means, but I had to play along with Kathy's quest. She suspected chemicals, so that was where I'd keep my line of questioning. "Perhaps a type of industrial cleaning product," I said, "or something more special."
"Do you like Sicilian food?"
"Mr. Wick, we just need to know what chemicals this prankster is using. Then we can check out the local suppliers and find out who has access."
"How industrious,"
he said.
"You're like Watson and Holmes. Tell me, Ms. Riddle, are you Watson?"
I kept going, ignoring his question. Kathy already tested a few of our book cleaning supplies, but they're designed to remove pen marks without lifting book ink. We're out of options. Do you have any ideas? I raised my eyebrows meaningfully. My aunt didn't have any ideas when I told her about it, but perhaps you do?
"Oh, I have plenty of ideas."
How about something slow-acting? For example, a chemical that doesn't react until the book's being read and the surface is exposed to light. He frowned and studied the books, flipping through all 3, his eyes darting back and forth. He retrieved a magnifying glass from his desk drawer and leaned over the pages.
"Interesting,"
he said. Kathy finally finished cleaning her glasses and put them on to stare him down. "It's horrible," she said. "We have to pay for replacements out of our budget, which is always getting slashed." He closed the books.
"I have a few notions about this matter, but trust me, it's not worth your time."
He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a metal cash box, the kind small businesses use for petty cash. He flipped open the metal lid, counted out a sum of bills and coins, and placed it on the edge of his desk in front of Kathy. She sputtered. "What's this? Vinny, I don't need your money."
"Sure you do. You said so yourself. That sum covers all 3 titles, plus 15% for the service charge. I'll keep these damaged copies and recycle them."
"Thanks for nothing," she said, "but those books are not for sale." She reached for the books, but he pulled them back out of her reach. She started to come around his desk. He quickly grabbed each book and tore it in half along the spine. Kathy made more sputtering noises.
"Let me take care of this,"
he said calmly. "This isn't any of your business, Vinny."
"Then why did you come here?"
She didn't have an answer for that. She flapped her hands at her sides as she stared at the torn-apart books.
"Vandalism of town assets is technically my business,"
he said. "We could repair such spine abuse, but what would be the point? The books had been worthless even before Vincent Wick ripped them in half. Kathy grabbed the money, gave me a dark look, and headed for the door. I followed her outside. The wind must have shifted because the air smelled as sweet and clean as any air I'd ever smelled. The speakers affixed to the metal building crackled. Vincent's voice boomed out at high volume.
Lovely to meet you, Zara Riddle.
There was a pause.
Always a pleasure, Kathy Carmichael.
Kathy made a very unlibrarian-like gesture with her right hand. We climbed into Kathy's car. She did a 3-point turn at high speed. The gravel of the parking area ground noisily beneath the Honda's tires. Then she hit the accelerator, kicking up gravel from the tires and spraying the metal office building with a machine gun-like rat-a-tat-tat. Chapter 9. Back at the library, I told Frank about our colorful and fragrant expedition to the dump. We didn't accomplish much. I grabbed a tissue and blew my nose for the third time. The garbage stink wouldn't go away. Not much, unless you count stress testing my olfactory system. Frank's eyes had been wide the whole time I had been talking. Now he looked exactly like the human equivalent of a bottle of pink champagne waiting to be uncorked. "You're way too excited," I said. "Did you do something naughty while we were gone?" He snorted.
I know something you don't know.
About Kathy and Vincent Wick? He made a sound like a balloon letting out air. "She told you." "She didn't tell me anything, but if I had to guess, I'd say they have a history of fighting over budgets with the town council."
They used to date,
he said. That would have been my next guess. Did she tell you that, or did you hear it from the gossip mill?
She told me, Frank said, at the staff barbecue last summer when she thought the grapefruit punch was non-alcoholic.
He rubbed his chin.
Let's see. It was sometime after she started the Congo line, but before she tried to rip the clothes off the Parks Board employee she thought was a stripper.
I glanced around to make sure nobody was close enough to hear us whispering. "Kathy knows how to party," I said.
"She claimed it was heat stroke," he said. "She said none of it was true, especially not the stuff about him being a wizard."
My jaw dropped. A wizard?
I know, right? That's a weird thing to say about someone, even if you do have heat stroke.
Did she mean an actual wizard? Like he does magic spells and curses? Frank frowned and tilted his head.
No, he said slowly. I assumed she meant a wizard who does tricks at children's birthday parties.
Those are called magicians.
What's the difference?
A wizard does real magic, whereas magicians do tricks, illusions. Frank tilted his head back and mimed a silent laugh.
He whispered, Zara Riddle, you are too funny. Your face right now is so serious.
He patted me on the shoulder and looked deeply into my eyes.
Magic isn't real.
I know that. I rolled my eyes and shrugged off his hand.
There are no wizards, he said,
or witches, or werewolves, or
vampires,
he finished for me. I coughed to clear the frog in my throat. The smell of the garbage dump had really done a number on me. Or maybe I was feeling the effects of the ghost who had infiltrated me via my left nostril. As I thought about the ghost, I remembered the name I had given him, Mr. Finance Wizard. If wizards weren't real, then why did I have one living inside my head? Frank, if I were to describe a library patron to you, do you think you could guess his name? Frank clapped his hands softly.
A game. Let's play.
It's a man, mid-50s, average height and build, with gray hair.
And?
That's all I've got.
That could be anyone. That could be me if I stopped coloring my hair.
Oh, I know. He's really into personal finance books. Frank's expression fell.
Again, that could be anyone. This game isn't as fun as I thought it would be.
Well, thanks for trying. I guess we better get back to work.
If we must,
he said dramatically. It was an act, of course. Frank Wonder loved his job as the children's librarian, and everyone loved him. We both got back to work, and I let my mind puzzle over the mysteries of the day. Luckily, I would be seeing Zinnia after my shift. I couldn't wait to ask her if wizards were real, and if Vincent Wick was one. Chapter 10. At the end of my shift, Zoe met me at the library and we walked to my aunt's house together. Zinnia felt the three of us Riddle should get together as a family regularly. This seemed like a wonderful idea. I wanted to make up for lost time, plus both Zoe and I occasionally enjoyed food that didn't come from a box. We arrived fashionably late, at 5 minutes past 6. The door opened as we walked up the front steps. My aunt was nowhere to be seen. She must have used magic to let us in. Anyone walking by could have seen. How brazen! I got in trouble for floating one little napkin, but apparently she could do whatever she wanted. Once inside, Zoe gawked up at the ceiling of the foyer. "Auntie Z sure loves her flowers." I followed her gaze up and did a double-take. I hadn't noticed before that the ceiling of the foyer had a fresco-style painting of an English garden. The imagery was lovely and professional quality, but seeing it on the ceiling was strange, and it made my up feel like down and gave me the disconcerting sensation I was falling. In a hushed tone, I agreed. "In fact, I'm not entirely sure there's a house underneath all this wallpaper and chintz." I pretended to rap on a wall, but didn't let my knuckles make contact. I gasped theatrically. "Zoe, there's no wall here. It's all a magical illusion." I made a spooky hand wave. "We're standing inside a mirage." Zoe looked at me, her expression brightening the way it did before she dropped some science on a conversation. "Mirages aren't magic, Mom. They're a naturally occurring optical phenomenon. Light rays are bent to produce a displaced image of distant objects. When people see bodies of water in the desert, it's actually the sky being reflected in mirror image." I pretended to knock on the wall again. "So are you saying there's a parallel universe somewhere with this exact house? With evil twin versions of both of us? If we're evil over there, we definitely have flaxen blonde hair, and you're a cheerleader." She shook her head. "Never mind." I looped my arm around her shoulders and gave her a sideways hug. "Don't say never mind. I love it when you go all Wikipedia on me. It makes me feel normal because I do it all the time, too." "A girl's gotta have some kind of skills," she said, "especially if she's a so-called witch with zero magical ability." My chest tightened. She made a fist and swung her arm in a keep-going gesture. "From here on, I'll be the one reciting book facts and writing up reports while you fight the forces of evil with actual magic." I gave her a sympathetic look. My aunt had a theory that my own powers had been delayed because I had been pregnant with Zoe at the time. Magic had a mind of its own and must have chosen to stay dormant rather than disrupt the pregnancy. As far as Zoe's missing powers went, we'd considered the obvious, that Zoe was similarly with child. I'd asked her more than once, "Are you absolutely sure you're not pregnant? You're not in trouble, I promise." This earned me a flurry of eye-rolling along with gagging. Zoe hadn't even been on a date with a boy, let alone any of the other stuff. It was possible the gift had skipped a generation. But Zinnia wouldn't give up. She felt a spark of magic in Zoe. She was teaching her novice witchcraft lessons anyway. That way, Zoe would know the mechanical side of spells when her abilities kicked in. I tried to be hopeful too, but whenever I saw my sweet, kind, brilliant daughter struggle with disappointment, it crushed me. I would have gladly given up all my powers if it meant she could have them. But Zinnia said that such a transfer was impossible. I could give my daughter love, money, and first choice from all boxes of chocolates, but I could never give her the one thing she desperately wanted: magic. "Hang in there," I said. "Patience is—" She stomped her foot. "Stop it." I frowned. "What's happening? Is this a temper tantrum? Are you the evil Mirage World, Zoe? What have you done with my real daughter?" She stomped again and groaned through gritted teeth. "Stop telling me to hang in there.
It's a meaningless platitude that you and Auntie Z say to make yourselves feel better, but it doesn't help me at all."
She gave me a dirty look, then turned to spread the dirt to Zinnia, who stood watching in the hallway. She must have come to see what was taking us so long at the front door. "We're having some feelings," I explained to my aunt. "Dinner is waiting," Zinnia said with cool authority. Zoe huffed and walked past my aunt toward the kitchen. "She's upset," Zinnia said, which is perfectly understandable given her situation. "Give her some space. You're always trying to micromanage her emotions." "I am?" "Yes, and that's fine when they're little, but in order to develop their own boundaries, children need to experience difficult feelings on their own." I took a deep breath and let her have it. "I didn't realize you were such an expert on child psychology. It must be from all your real-world experience of having raised how many children exactly?" I pretended to rub my chin thoughtfully. "You know, I don't think you have any kids. Not that I can think of." She was slow to answer. "A wise woman can see more from the bottom of a well than a fool can see from a mountaintop." "Are you calling me a fool?" "Not at all." She took my elbow and gently directed me toward the smell of food. "The way you climb mountains is admirable, Zara. I certainly have a lot to learn from you." My irritation was replaced by confusion and then hunger. Dinner smelled good. If I was a micromanager, then fine. I was ready to micromanage some food into my mouth. We found Zoe sitting at the table with her hands on her lap. She turned to look out the window rather than make eye contact. I could tell by her body language that she was embarrassed by her outburst, but not enough to apologize. She was probably still arguing with the version of me who lived in her head. I knew because I did the same. I watched her silently as she stared out the window before shifting to examining strands of her hair. She twisted her hair and scowled at the white-tipped split ends. We were both overdue to get our hair trimmed. I needed to find a hairdresser for both of us. Zinnia brought in the dinner. I asked her, "Is there a spell for getting rid of split ends?" "Certainly," she said, "but I go to a regular hair salon. We must not rely on magic too heavily." "But you want me to practice spells over and over so I can get good at them. Why not do both? Kill two birds with one stone." She arched her eyebrows. "A wise woman can see more from the bottom of a well than a fool can see from a mountaintop," she said for the second time that evening. It was no less irritating than the first time. "I'd rather be on a mountaintop than stuck at the bottom of a well." My daughter made a snorting sound. "Of course you would," Zinnia said. "How about we eat some dinner now?" I looked at the bubbling golden surface of the steaming dish before us. The food smelled like the exact opposite of the Wisteria sanitation management station. I no longer cursed the olfactory sensory neurons in my nose for being so good at their job. "Thank you so much for dinner," I said. I heaped on more compliments as she heaped the food onto my rose-patterned china plate. "It's just a simple casserole with green beans," she said, "with handmade pasta and fresh herbs from the garden." "Well, I love anything with cheese on top, and this appears to have two kinds of cheese, so you have my admiration, my gratitude, and a kidney should you ever need one." My daughter was silent. I kicked the leg of her chair. Zoe jolted. "Thank you, Auntie Z," she said, still avoiding my eyes. "This is exactly what I need after a long, difficult week." "But it's only Monday," Zinnia said with a light laugh. "Oh, right," Zoe said. Zinnia asked, "Are you having difficulties at your new school? I'm acquainted with the principal. I can speak to him on your behalf if you'd like." Zoe said around a mouthful of food, skillfully changing the topic. "This is amazing." She pulled the plate closer to the edge of the table and shifted her chair forward like she meant business. "Never mind me and my school stuff. I'm fine." She flicked her gaze to me briefly. "Mom, you should tell Auntie Z about your exciting trip to the dump today." "The dump?" Zinnia glanced down at the food and frowned. "If you must," she said. While we ate, I told her about the other books with the missing words. I didn't tell her about the ghost because my daughter was there and I didn't want her to know about it. Not yet, anyway. So I skipped past that and told my aunt about my visit to the Wisteria Sanitation Management Station with Kathy. He ripped up the books and kept them? My aunt seemed surprised by this. He said vandalism of town property was his business. Getting under Kathy's skin is his business. They used to be an item? Zinnia tilted back her head and looked down her nose at me. Sounds like you've been digging around a lot today. Frank likes to gossip. And you like to listen. I held my hands up. I can't help it if people enjoy telling me stories. Frank said that Kathy called Wick a wizard. Zinnia chortled. That's funny. Is he a wizard? He was giving us orders through his speaker system like he was Gandalf the Grey. Speakers? That's new. Well, is he a wizard? Are wizards real? There are all kinds of wizards, she said. Vincent Wick is not like the ones in storybooks. But he is your cleaner guy, right? He came here to check the house and put up protective wards? She pinched her lips shut. Zinnia, I know it was him. You don't know that. She looked down at the food and rearranged the serving dishes. Fine, I said. Is he a shifter? Zinnia said gravely, You would be wise to steer clear of Vincent Wick. The man is descended from a very long line of Wicks. The Wick family has lived in Wisteria since before it was even a town. Sure, I'd buy that. His family goes way back. Are they shifters? Whatever makes you think they are. There was a round window in his office building, and you were the one who said shifters like windows that aren't square. Plus, he's got this serious hawk vibe going on, or maybe an eagle vibe. Are you thinking? She trailed off, glancing at Zoe. Zoe, who had been quiet until now, interjected. Auntie Z, she thinks he's the giant monster bird that attacked her and Chet in the woods. I forced a little laugh. Oh, that little incident? I almost forgot all about it. I'm sure it was just an eagle protecting her nest. Mom, Zoe said seriously, I remember how shaken up you were that day. You'd be upset too if an eagle swooped at you. I waved a hand. Remember when old Mrs. Pinkman's budgie got out of his cage while you were watering her plants and pooped on you? You were inconsolable. Zoe's eyes widened. That bird was pure evil. His name was Marzipants, and he had it in for me. Exactly, I said, and it was just a budgie. An eagle is much scarier. Zoe smirked. I still think the giant bird could have been a shape-shifting garbage man trying to take out the trash. Ha ha, I said, because I'm the trash. Nice one. We all laughed, though I knew my daughter wouldn't be joking around if she had seen the damage the bird had done. At the time, I had downplayed the injuries to keep from scaring her, but now I wasn't so sure about my decision. The rules of being a parent are so contradictory. You want your child to feel safe and secure, but you also want them to be aware of the dangers in the world. After the laughter died away, Zinnia said, The Wick family has always been involved with magic, but I don't believe Vincent Wick attacked you, not even if he were capable of such a thing. You should check him, I said. Test him to see if he can shift into a bird. And how do you suggest I do that? I shrugged. There must be some sort of litmus test for detecting magical abilities. Zoe leaned in with interest. Is there? I continued. There should be a simple yes or no test, like those sticks you pee on to find out if you're pregnant. The corners of Zinnia's mouth twitched into a smile. Are you suggesting I should have Vincent Wick urinate onto a plastic stick that detects supernatural abilities? You gotta try something, I said. It's pretty obvious he's some sort of villain. He's got way too many file cabinets in that office. Why does a garbage dump need so much paperwork? These are all very interesting observations. Have you run your wild theories past Chet? I waved one hand dismissively. Never mind about Chet. Is there any sort of test, pea stick or otherwise? My aunt paused as though struggling to not call me a ding-dong. Finally, she said, "There is no such test, and you ought to be thankful, Zara. If there were such a test, our kind would have been rounded up and exterminated years ago." "They tried," I said. "Fun fact, not all witches were burned, mainly just the ones in France. The ones in New England were hanged." "That's not really a fun fact," Zoe said. "It was a fun fact before we became witches," I said. Zoe's expression grew serious. "They used to drown red-headed babies, too. It's a miracle any of us are around." I leaned over to tousle her hair. "You're my little miracle." She pulled away before I could get in a good tousling. My aunt sighed and looked mournfully at the food on her plate. "So much for a pleasant meal without any discussions of murder and mayhem." "You can't say we're a boring family," I said. "We're anything but boring," Zoe agreed. "Except for me. I'm a bit boring because I can't do magic." I pointed at her plate. "Eat your veggies. I hear green beans help bring on magical abilities." I winked at my aunt. The three of us resumed eating. I'd hoped to get more information from my aunt, but I should have known she'd be her usual secretive self. At least her facial expression had confirmed for me that Vincent Wick was her cleaner, and that he was involved with magic somehow. What had she meant that he was a wizard, but not the kind from storybooks? Did she mean he was a magician at children's parties? No way. No parent would hire a guy who looked like a movie mob boss to entertain their small children, not even with a discount coupon. Was he a financial wizard, like the ghost I'd seen earlier that day? Probably not. If he were rich, he'd probably spend his days in a place that didn't reek of hot garbage when the wind changed direction. We'd finished eating. Zinnia stood and began clearing the dishes using both magic and her hands. "Girls, please help me tidy up." Zoe and I exchanged a look. I whispered to my daughter, "I like the two of us being called girls." Zoe said, "And I like doing the dishes when it's at someone else's house. You get to see where everything goes." My aunt said, "If you like that, you're going to love helping me whip up a batch of bookworm dough." In unison, Zoe and I said, "Bookworm dough?" My aunt smiled. "Yes. Tonight's magic lesson will be a practical one. One of my suppliers mentioned she was nearly out of black scarabeus blood, and I realized what we might use for tonight's lesson." In unison, Zoe and I said, "Black scarabeus blood?" "Not the black scarabeus blood. Oh, no. That would be dangerous. But it made me think of bookworms, so I picked up some supplies. Zara, you can put it to use tomorrow at work." "Me? But I'm not supposed to do magic at the library." "That's true," she said. "Forget I even brought it up." No, I said quickly. "I'm just giving you a hard time because sometimes you're a bit fast and loose with the rules." She scoffed. "I'm neither fast nor loose, thank you very much." "Sorry," I said. I bent at the knees and made myself shorter until I was squatting. "Look at me." "What are you doing?" "I'm hiking down from Fool Mountain," I said. "I'm coming all the way down to your womanly well of wisdom." "You're making fun of me," she said. "Not on purpose." I straightened up. "I'm the fool. You're the wise woman. I get it now." Zinnia looked at the plates I had been levitating. They tipped and spilled food everywhere. "Maybe we're already moving too quickly with your lessons," she said. Zoe stepped between us and pressed her palms together in prayer. "Please, Auntie Z, can we make bookworm dough? My mother will behave herself, I swear." "I also swear." Zinnia threw up both hands. "Fine. I'll probably live to regret this, but I hate to see good ingredients go to waste." Chapter 11. After we made the bookworm dough, I got a few minutes alone with my aunt so I could tell her about my new spirit. I also filled her in on what Chet had told me Saturday night at dinner about needing help with a possible spirit walker. She didn't look enthused. "Chet specifically said the Riddle family, not just you alone?" "Lucky you," I said. "You're getting roped into more X-Files stuff." No, thank you. She shook her head. Tell Chet you found his ghost and promise you won't do anything dangerous. You want me to deal with it on my own? You're not helping? But you're my elder witch. You're supposed to be mentoring me. Zara, I do what I can, but I'm not spirit charmed like you. To be honest, you already know more about ghosts than I do. I'm not sure how much I can help you at this point. What about your coven? She gave me a blank look. Come on, I said. I know there must be a coven. You probably call it a book club or something, right? The blank look continued. Aunt Zinnia, you must know other witches you can talk to. It's not that simple. She leaned back and glanced into the kitchen where Zoe was happily studying a magical book. She turned back to me and spoke in an even softer voice. I will ask around on your behalf. I'll see if I can find you any more information about being spirit charmed. Tuesday morning, I arrived at the library with a ball of bookworm dough in a Tupperware container. To any outside observer, it was nothing more than a pale green version of the sort of sculpting clay that children play with. For my mission, I located the rockstar memoir that had been returned the previous day. It was on the display table with Frank's other wonder picks. Whichever employee had received it back into the library must not have done a thorough flip-through, as they hadn't noticed the pages were missing so many words that some pages were practically blank. I couldn't blame my coworker too harshly, though. The flip-through is mainly to release bookmarks and other debris. It would be impractical to have staff painstakingly checking that all the words were where they ought to be. Next, I took the book with me toward an unoccupied aisle. Along the way, I checked in social sciences for any signs of my ghost. The area was clear. How ironic that I worked in a library yet had no access to the witchcraft information I really needed. Back when I'd learned about my witch powers, I'd immediately checked under call number 133.4, Philosophy and Psychology, Parapsychology and Occultism, Specific Topics, Witchcraft-Sorcery. Our witchcraft section was sparse, and the few books we carried had the same public domain information and woodcut illustrations of witch burnings. Not fun reading. Not helpful either. Once I'd reached the social sciences aisle with no view of the high-traffic zones, I reached down into the pocket of my loose skirt for the container of bookworm dough. I took a good look around to make sure nobody was watching. This wasn't the first time I'd used magic inside the library. I regularly used my telekinesis to tighten the bows of my lace-up boots without having to bend over. And while I would never float a book down from a tall shelf, I had been using my powers as a power assist, nudging a row of books to the left or right to free up a book I was retrieving. The telekinesis could speed things up or make certain book maneuvers less awkward, but using magic didn't save me energy. The power seemingly drew from my body. I'd get just as tired pushing a heavy book cart using magic as I would from using my arms and core muscles. The only difference was that the magical tiredness spread more widely through my body. Also, I could rejuvenate quickly with a snack. Thus, my magic was limited by my ability to quickly ingest chocolate, so it wasn't a bad trade-off after all. Using the bookworm dough would draw little from my body as it was already charmed by Zinnia. The power was baked in, so to speak, though the dough hadn't actually been baked. My hands shook. I glanced around again, feeling ridiculous. It was still early on a Tuesday morning. The library wasn't at all crowded. At opening, we'd had the usual rush of people coming in to claim the best workstations, plus a few patrons with small kids in tow, knocking off their first errand of the day, and now it would be quiet until the lunchtime rush. I pulled the lid off the container with a pop. The pop was not loud, but it wasn't a typical library sound. I leaned around the corner of the shelves and looked around. Frank stood at the circulation desk. He was visually scanning the main floor. Had he heard the telltale pop? He tilted his head back and his nose up, sniffing the air. He must have heard the pop. Now he was sniffing for smuggled food. I pulled back into the aisle quickly. Why had I picked a book aisle? I should have taken the book to our repair alcove and hidden in plain sight. Too late now. But I already had the dough in my hand. I could be done within seconds. Without looking down, I palmed the ball in my right hand and tucked the container back into my pocket. The ball felt smooth and cool and weirdly refreshing, like dipping your hand into a bag of white flour. Its ingredients were partly magical, yet included household staples such as cornstarch and finely milled white pepper. Zinnia said the cornstarch was for bulk and the white pepper was mainly to keep unsuspecting regular people from eating it. I'd asked her why someone would eat a pale green raw dough. She'd explained that the main magical ingredient, the bookworm dust, was an attractor. An attractor is similar to a magnet, but for magic. Attractors serve as binding agents, holding magical components together, like how the egg in mayonnaise holds together both oil and vinegar in a suspension. I brought the dough to my nose and sniffed. It did have a tangy smell, like vinegar mingled with a mildew aroma, as well as a hint of something floral. Hibiscus? I wondered what it tastes like. Zinnia warned me not to eat it, which I'd laughed at, but now I really needed to know if it tasted the same as it smelled. Would it be sour or sweet? I touched the tip of my tongue to the dough. Big mistake. The instant my tongue grazed the dough, pain shot through me like an electric jolt. My head flashed with colors and I convulsed, sneezing once, twice, 3 times. In the silence following my sneezing fit, the library was more quiet than ever. An unseen woman nearby called out a friendly Gesundheit. My body convulsed and I sneezed 3 more times. The woman, who seemed to be in the laptop workspaces, asked sweetly, "Are you okay over there?" "I'll be fine," I called back, my voice croaky. I sneezed once more for good measure. "That was the last one," I called out breezily, hoping I was right. I looked down at my right hand, expecting to see the pale green ball of dough. My palm was empty. Had I accidentally ingested the bookworm dough? I started gagging. This was worse than the sneezing, but I got myself under control before it turned into actual retching. My whole body was damp and hot with panic. I'd assured Zinnia I wouldn't eat the thing, so she hadn't covered the side effects. How bad could it be? I probed my mouth with my tongue, checking my teeth for signs of the dough, even though I swore I'd barely grazed it with the tip of my tongue. There was a foul taste inside my mouth, but no residue. I decided I couldn't have eaten the dough. Even if my ghost had taken over my body and kicked me out, I would remember the transition happening. The only logical explanation was that I had dropped the dough while sneezing. My hands twitched as I started the spell for locating lost objects. Just as quickly as I'd begun, I stopped myself. Zinnia hadn't just told me not to eat the dough. She'd also warned me to never use other spells in conjunction with it. There could be unforeseen interactions, such as when you take a combination of medications. I stepped back and visually searched the surrounding shelves and the floor. I opened the hardcover memoir I'd brought with me and flipped through the pages. No squashed ball of bookworm dough, just a bunch of blank, wordless areas. How would I explain to my aunt what I'd done? Would it be overkill to visit the hospital and request my stomach get pumped? Finally, after several minutes of sweaty panic, I was looking down while turning, my skirt swished out of the way, when I spotted the ball of bookworm dough. The pale green blob was on the toe of my right boot. I hadn't felt its landing through the hard leather. "You cheeky thing," I whispered. I swear the small bumps and dimples on the dough ball's surface looked exactly like a face, grinning up at me. With a sharp kick upward, I whipped the ball into the air, palmed it again, and got back on track with my mission. Following Zinnia's instructions, I rolled the dough out into a log shape. Next, I opened the hardcover Rockstar memoir to a section that was missing words. I took the bookworm log and used it like a rolling pin, rolling it up and down over the blank sections. Would it work? I bit my lower lip as I waited to see a reaction. My lower lip felt numb and tingly, but I quickly forgot about that and the horrible taste in my mouth when the magic started to work. Before my eyes, the missing words all reappeared. Not only did the dough work, but it worked better than expected. The magic was so powerful it didn't even need to contact every page. It was passing through the book on its own, restoring all the words, dozens of pages deep. Faster and faster I worked, flipping the book entire chapters at a time, rolling the dough across to do its work, and watching in amazement as the words appeared. The restoration was perfect. I closed the book with a crisp, satisfied snap. Where was I again? There were so many books. Oh, right, the library. Pull yourself together, Zara. Reality came back to me in a swooning rush. My mind felt foggy, as though I had been in a trance, which I technically had been, since using magical objects puts the user into an altered state just as readily as casting a difficult spell. As I returned to the regular world, the shelves around me loomed high overhead. My eyes blurred and the whole world seemed to be about to topple over on me. I had the book in one hand and the bookworm dough clutched tightly in the other. I steadied myself by leaning my back against one bookcase. I was breathing heavily, panting, and hadn't noticed until now. My mouth felt like something had used it as a litter box. Why was the horrible taste still not washed away? Was my dry mouth caused by using the magic, or my mouth's natural response to having tasted a mixture of cornstarch, white pepper, and the ground-up body casings of magical bookworms? Body casings, I realized with horror. That was the ingredient I hadn't wanted to think about. I had actually tasted the dusty old dead body casings of a magical insect, or larva, or was it eggs? I pushed the thought from my mind as I put the dough back into the plastic case. I fluffed out my billowy skirts to hide the shape of the container and walked back toward the library's counter, dropping the perfectly restored book on the table as I walked. Mission accomplished. The dough still had plenty of power left in it, so I would simply intercept any books with missing words and restore them as needed. I even had a cover story in case Kathy asked what I was doing. I would tell her the words hadn't been erased or removed at all, but that a white mold was growing on top of the letters and the dough removed the mold. No sane librarian would believe such an absurd tale, of course, but Zinnia had taught me something new. A bluffing spell. It would increase my ability to be convincing in a verbal situation. According to my elder witch mentor, the spell increased the witch's charisma as well as the subject's gullibility. The bluffing spell was well above my current ability and unlikely to work very well in my novice hands, but it was all I had. That and my charming smile. Frank tapped me on the shoulder. "I'm putting in a sushi order for lunch. Do you want some?" "Count me in," I replied with a happy grin. Sushi would be just the thing to cleanse my palate. He looked at my mouth. His eyes widened and he let out a strangled cry. I covered my mouth with my hand. "Is something wrong?" He made a gagging sound and stepped further away from me. "Good one," he said. "You really got me that time, Zara. I might barf." I did? "Your lips are really black," he said. "Did you eat one of our stamp pads?" "Sure," I said slowly. "If that's what it looks like, that must be what I did." "You'd better wash that ink out of your mouth before Kathy sees. She's been on edge since your trip to see Wick yesterday." "I'll take care of this right away." I excused myself to go use the staff washroom. When I saw what had startled Frank, my eyes widened as much as his had. I did look like someone who had eaten a stamp pad, or several of them. My lips were darker than black currant jelly. Not great, but not a disaster. Black lipstick wasn't the most flattering shade on me, but a stranger might assume it was lipstick. Then I opened my mouth and nearly gagged. Everything from my teeth to my uvula was a dark, inky black. The inside of my mouth was as murky and terrible as an oil spill. I turned on the bathroom sink's tap, cupped water in my hands, and started rinsing furiously. The water I spat out was clear and pristine as the water from the tap. The blackness inside my mouth didn't lighten at all. I rinsed again and again, but it did nothing for the horror inside my mouth. Chapter 12. What would you do if the inside of your mouth, including your teeth, turned as black as the darkest licorice? You'd probably stop eating whatever had caused it. I couldn't solve my problem that easily. I hadn't eaten any bookworm dough. All I had done was touch the tip of my tongue to it. My saliva must have triggered something in the compound. But how? The moisture in my hand hadn't done anything. It seemed spit was a very different story. I phoned my aunt from the bathroom and explained my situation. You licked it? I know you warned me not to, but I can't explain it. You've got to give me a spell or a magical mouthwash to reverse this. I'm looking at my mouth in the bathroom mirror right now, and it's like staring into the abyss. What does Nietzsche say? When you stare into the abyss, it stares into you. You become the thing that disturbs you most. I tore my gaze away from the scary reflection. I'm becoming blackness. I feel it inside me now, spreading. Aunt Zinnia, you've got to help me. No. You can't help me over the phone? Fair enough. I'll sneak out of here and meet you at your house. No. I'll meet you wherever you want. I'll buy you lunch. Let's go to that Thai place you like. She didn't answer. I knew she was still there because I could hear her huffy breathing. I had apparently called her while she was busy with some secret business that she wouldn't tell me about even if I asked. Fine, I said. I'll buy you lunch and a new pair of boots. You owe me a pair anyway. Remember when you stormed out of my house wearing my favorite pair? I'd been recently electrocuted, Aunt Zinnia. I wasn't in full control of myself. The side effects include muscle stiffness, anxiety, and theft of footwear. She gave no sign of amusement. I upped the ante. I'll buy you lunch and 3 pairs of boots. No spell, she said with finality. You must live through the results of your mistake. Are you trying to teach me a lesson? Magic is teaching you this lesson, not me. I turned back to my reflection and frowned at my blackened mouth. Frowning only made it worse. Some lesson that'll be, I grumbled. It's going to be so memorable when I get fired, can't make my mortgage payments, and have to move in with you. Then magic will teach you a lesson about not being a very helpful mentor. You'll have 2 more riddles living under your roof, eating all your food, and switching the TV channel in the middle of your favorite show, whatever that is. Gardening, maybe, or cooking. Zara, is the blackness spreading? Yes, I said. I can feel it in my soul. Zara. I leaned into the mirror and examined the border of my lips. I could see some regular pink lip skin. The black had been over the edge a few minutes ago. No, it's not spreading, I said. It might even be receding. Then you'll have to use the spell of time. What? I perked up. There's a spell to move time? She made a strangled sound. It's an expression. I meant you need to be patient and wait while the effects wear off over time. That's the spell of time. It makes things change. Are you sure? I feel like I'm breathing faster than usual, or slower, and my stomach feels weird, like I had too many mochas. Well, that's what you get for eating bookworm dough. But I didn't eat it. I only tasted it. Okay, I see your point. It's not going to harm you. The compound is used by witches to restore text that's been damaged by regular wear and tear. Did it at least work on the books? Yes, it worked perfectly, like magic. See? The bookworm dough puts ink only where the dough feels it belongs. If the dough restored ink to your mouth, it must have felt that your mouth needed more ink. She chuckled softly. The dough felt I should have an extreme goth look? Apparently. Wait, since when does dough have feelings? Magic has a mind of its own, Zara. You know that. Or at least you should, because I keep telling you. She sighed heavily into her phone's receiver. Her disappointment in me was as palpable as it was familiar. Sometimes when I was talking to my aunt, my mother didn't seem so dead after all. I must have offended the dough in some way, I said. Should I have given it a name? It looks like a Henry. Zinnia made a strangled noise. Don't you dare. Don't go naming that which ought not to be named, and don't go putting things into your mouth. I've got to go now, but please do try to keep yourself out of trouble for the remainder of the day. I gave myself a smile in the bathroom mirror. With my blackened teeth and gums, I looked like a ghoulish creature from a horror movie. "I'll be a good girl," I said creepily. Or maybe I said it normally, and it was imbued with the creepiness from my appearance. "Zara tries to be a good girl," I said with even more creepiness. "Zara doesn't mean to be a bad witch." I heard pages riffling on the other side of the phone call. 8 to 12 hours, Zinnia said. The side effects from ingestion of any part of the bookworm are said to wear off on human subjects within 8 to 12 hours. Unless what? It may become permanent in the event of death, but I don't think we need to worry about that. I swallowed hard. Right. Let's not worry about that. Did you lose consciousness? No, I didn't even realize anything weird had happened. I did sneeze a few times, but that was it. Just sneezing? You're lucky. Your witch powers protected you. If a non-witch had eaten the dough, the results would have been much worse. I patted the plastic container in my pocket. Don't worry, I'll keep a close watch on the dough so it doesn't get nibbled on by anyone else. I would come to the library right now and take it away for disposal, but I'm a bit busy at the moment. Do you want me to throw it out? Flush it down the toilet? She gasped. Don't do that! Proper disposal is another lesson entirely. We'll need a vessel in which to discharge. Like nuclear waste? Like magical waste. Wow, I didn't even know there was such a thing. Now you know. She paused. Until we can properly dispose of the dough, don't let it out of your sight. Promise you'll be careful. I promise. I glanced at my extreme goth mouth. I've learned my lesson. Drink plenty of water. Will it speed up the recovery? It's always good to stay hydrated. She said goodbye, and I was on my own again. Just me and my ghoulish black smile. Chapter 13. With no magical solution to my ghoul mouth problem, I had to get creative with non-magical tools. I cleaned off the staff washroom's counter and spread out all the makeup in my purse, plus a few things from the lost and found box. I applied a liberal base of opaque skin-toned concealer to cover my stained lips. It worked, but with no pink on my lips, I looked even more terrifying, like a ghost. I applied a blend of 2 lipsticks and a lip gloss to put my lips back on. For my teeth, I ducked out into the book repair alcove and grabbed scissors and a roll of white cloth-backed tape for repairing book spines. I cut out tooth-sized pieces of white repair tape for my front teeth. The blackness inside my mouth was color-fast, so at least it didn't stain the tape. My gums and tongue were still black. There was nothing I could do about that, but if I kept my talking to a minimum, it was possible nobody would notice. When I emerged from the washroom, Frank was returning with the sushi. He gave my lips a look, but didn't say anything. Now I had to eat sushi without disturbing the tape on my teeth or eating the tape. I turned my face down with each bite and made only the minimum number of chews needed to swallow. I was finished with my bento box before Frank had even rubbed the wood burrs from his chopsticks. It wasn't much different from how I normally ate sushi. After lunch, I performed my librarian duties carefully. I answered patrons' questions by whispering through my hand shyly. If someone gave me a suspicious look, I would cough into my fist and point to a prominently displayed container of cough lozenges. Everyone bought it. At the end of the day, I punched my time card and left work without much of a goodbye to the others. I felt terrible for my rudeness, but giving my coworkers a flash of teeth made from book-mending tape would have been much less forgivable. I walked home quickly, looking forward to brushing my teeth. The glue on the book-mending tape kept melting. It tasted like I had been sucking on a glue stick lollipop. As I rounded the corner onto Beacon Street, I was walking quickly, eager to get home. I slowed when I caught sight of an attractive male backside. It was Chet, unloading grocery bags from his vehicle. There was a package of powdered miniature donuts at the top of one bag. My mouth immediately watered, which didn't help with the taste of glue stick lollipop inside my mouth. Chet saw me walking toward him and followed my gaze to the groceries. He rearranged the bag's contents to hide the donuts. Too late. I had seen the sugary treats. Mr. Moore's traditional parenting skills weren't so perfect after all. "That's an interesting white vegetable you have there. Is it a new type of turnip?" I wanted to lay the comment on him, but I bit my blackened tongue.
"Hello," he said. "Just getting back from work?"
I nodded.
"Busy day at the library?"
I gave him a so-so gesture with one hand. He gave me a suspicious look.
"Cat got your tongue?"
I pulled the box of cough lozenges from my pocket and gave them a shake. He said, "Speaking of cats, why don't you have one? Isn't your type supposed to have a minimum of one cat?" I raised an eyebrow. Did he mean witch or librarian or single woman? And did he want me to blast him in his hairy wolf chest with a blue fireball?
"I'm sure you'll get one soon enough," he said. "It's basically inevitable. One of those basic laws of the universe. Your type and cats."
He managed to laugh at his joke without smiling. I tucked the lozenges back in my pocket and waved goodbye.
"It's been nice talking to you," he said.
He turned back to his groceries. I remained standing on the sidewalk. There was something to talk to him about. His people had been looking for a spirit walker, and the day before I had encountered someone who fit the description. But then it seemed like I had lost him again right away. Mr. Finance Wizard hadn't made any appearances that day. There wasn't much to tell Chet, even if I wanted to, and I did not want to talk to him. The blackness in my mouth had faded, but my gums were still a sickly shade one might describe on a paint chip as clarified bruise. Also, there was a good chance Chet had noticed by now that I had swiped his clicky pen, and I wasn't ready to give it back. I hadn't even clicked it once for educational purposes. So I turned and walked to my house. Chet and I were synchronized, both of us walking up our front steps at the same time. Once I reached the porch, I looked over at him on his porch. His expression shifted, like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the starting word. I waited. He gave me a polite nod, shifted his groceries to one arm, and opened his door. He didn't look back. I let myself into my house and finally released the breath I had been holding. Why did I suddenly feel like crying? I felt like I had lost something, but how could that be? You can't lose something you never had. Use the spell of time, I told myself. Tough as I acted on the surface, I had been hurt by Chet's romantic rejection. Perhaps it was for the best that we had fizzled before we had ever caught on fire. It was better than dating, breaking up, and continuing to live next to each other. We wouldn't be plagued by memories of intimate activities as we went about normal neighborly business. We could discuss what kind of wood to use for mending our shared fence without blushing over past conversations about what sort of wood made for the best spanking paddles. Not that I had fantasized about playing wild bedroom games with Chet. Not much, anyway. I definitely had some daydreams. I'm not made of stone. When he had shifted into a wolf to save me from the bird monster, he'd achieved mythical status in my heart. There would have to be something wrong with a woman if she didn't have fantasies about a guy like that. But, like the blackness from the bookworm dough, surely the feelings I had for my hot neighbor would eventually fade. I found Zoe at the kitchen island doing her homework. I was using a tissue to wipe the layers of makeup off my lips when I walked in. She took one look at my mouth and said, "That's not your shade, Mom." I told her all about my taste test mishap with the bookworm dough. She enjoyed a good laugh at my expense. "This could have just as easily happened to you," I said defensively. She squinted and wiped a tear from one eye. "Keep telling yourself that if it makes you feel any better. Zoe, I've seen you put plenty of questionable things into your mouth. The first time I took you to a beach, you tried to eat the dead crabs that were washed up on the shore. You can't say I'm not a cheap date." She leaned in and took a good look at my mouth, pulling my chin down as though giving me a dental exam. "What did the bookworm dough taste like?" You know what? I have no idea. Maybe I should taste it again. We stared at each other before bursting into laughter. "It will have to stay a mystery," I said. The magic really took me by surprise. I got a horrible jolt of pain, then I kept sneezing. I'm still a bit dizzy. My tummy rumbled, but hungry.
Me too.
I got rid of the sticky tape and started hunting around the fridge for dinner.
If you cut the mold off the cheese, it's still safe to eat, right?
I pulled out a chunk of something and took a closer look. Never mind, that's not even cheese.
No offense to your kitchen skills, but I think we should do a seance to bring back the ghost of Winona Vanderzalm, just for a few dinners.
You must be possessed, I said, narrowing my eyes at her. My daughter loves my creative use of leftovers and condiments.
Oh, does she? Let's see what you can do.
Game on. I pulled out several containers of leftovers and assembled the items that weren't yet fuzzy. I topped it with mango chutney and tossed the resulting pile of food into the microwave.
Use the thingy,
Zoe said. The thingy? Could you be even less specific?
The plastic lid thingy. Auntie Z will get mad if you explode the food all over the inside of the microwave. She says we shouldn't microwave so much in the first place, but the least we could do is to cover the food so it doesn't look like a burrito crime scene inside there.
With a weary groan, I stopped the microwave, delaying our dinner by at least 20 precious seconds. I started it back up once I had covered my food with the dome-shaped plastic lid Zinnia had gifted us with the previous week. With my best redneck voice, I said, "That gosh darn lady's trying to make us all fancy."
Speaking of fancy, I was thinking about your ghost situation. We should be on the lookout for wealthy ghosts. Their families might give us a reward for passing along messages.
She did a double eyebrow lift and grinned devilishly.
This could be our lucky break.
Since when does my daughter scheme, let alone scheme about extorting the wealthy? She didn't even bat an eyelash.
Every witch needs a specialty. Mine must be scheming.
She closed her textbooks and pushed them aside to make room for dinner.
Can you really call it extortion if you're providing a valuable service to people in need?
My daughter, the extortionist. And to think, when you were 6, you wanted to be a ballerina.
I did want to be a ballerina, but then my hopes were dashed when Susie Wiseacres told me I had the wrong kind of toes, and I'd never be stable on point, and I'd never get to be a real ballerina because I wasn't born having what it takes.
She had been smiling, but now her face was slack. She was thinking about another disappointment, another ability she didn't have.
Stupid Susie Wiseacres, she said bitterly.
Being a ballerina isn't everything, I said. They don't get to eat yummy takeout food for dinner. No carbs whatsoever. You know, I saw a flock of them once. Eating, if you could call it eating. I'd never seen anything so sad. Did you know that ballerinas gather in a circle and peck at birdseed?
Right,
Zoe said slowly.
I've heard about that. And they take baths in puddles after the rain.
That's right. Ballerinas only get puddle baths and birdseed, so I don't know why anyone would want to be one. Plus, after their final performance of Swan Lake for the season, they have to fly south for the winter. Not everyone survives the arduous journey. Several of them are shot by hunters and served at Thanksgiving.
I think you might be making some of this up.
The microwave beeped. I took out the plate, whipped off the protective plastic lid, and split the serving onto 2 plates with a magical flourish. She applauded my showmanship. We both ate right there at the kitchen island, next to piles of homework and mail. I'd imagined dinner being exactly like this, months earlier when I had first toured the house. As our bellies filled with warm food, I forgot about the blackness inside my mouth and simply enjoyed the moment. What if this is as good as it gets? That would be fine by me because this was really good. I just had to be careful and not screw it up. Whatever Zinnia told me to do or not do, I'd obey her. Mostly. Chapter 14. After dinner, Zoe opened her textbooks again. More homework?
I'm finished with my assignments, but I just want to double-check everything, she said.
How about instead we go for a walk? There's supposed to be a shortcut around here and takes you straight to a hidden part of the beach. She looked pointedly at my mouth. I can't be seen with you in that condition. Is it still bad? I stuck out my tongue and tried to see it by looking straight down. Either my tongue was too short or my cheeks were too round. Why can't I see my tongue? Don't tell me it's invisible. I wish it were invisible. It looks rotten. Can you see your tongue? Does your face work any better than mine? I might be defective. Zoe stuck out her tongue. You're not defective. It's hard to see the tip of your own tongue. I stuck my tongue out harder. Now I really want to see it. I tried again. I think I see it. Yeah, still brown. How? She rubbed her cheek. Tongues aren't meant to stretch that far. Maybe there's a spell that can give us snake tongues. Her eyes widened. Auntie Z said making physical changes to your body is extremely dangerous. I was kidding. I wouldn't want a snake tongue anyway. At the mention of snakes, I remembered the blonde with the lively hair and what I had learned from Chet. Hey, Zoe, what do you think of gorgons? She crossed her arms over her chest. Blech, I try not to think of gorgons, well, ever. If I see one in a movie, even just a flash, it gives me nightmares for weeks. I don't even like the look of celery root, the way the little snaky bits twist around each other, all writhing around and being snaky. She shuddered. Why? Because gorgons are real and one of them lives in our town. No reason, I lied, just making conversation. She returned her attention to her book. Anything good in there? I asked. Are you really so bored that you want to hear about my homework? I'll find something else to do. I got up and checked my smile in the reflection of our brand new store-bought toaster. My teeth had lightened, but only to a rotten brown. My mouth looked human, but the overall effect would still frighten children. I'd have to stay in for the night. What could I do? You could work on your special project, Zoe said without looking up from her book. Special project? Finish what you started last night. Aunt Zinnia wouldn't want me doing anything creative with the bookworm dough. I mean the special project you started at home last night. Special project? It had a familiar ring, but I had no recollection of anything specific. We had come home from Zinnia's around 9 o'clock, and then what? 9 was too early for bed. I must have done something. This special project? Zoe pushed a stack of papers across the kitchen island toward me. Last night you swore you'd never let the electric company or anyone else cut us off. You said you were going to organize all the bills and payments into one streamlined system. I did? Zoe stared at me, her hazel eyes widening. That wasn't you, was it? What did I say exactly? You were babbling about all sorts of stuff like you usually do. She put her chin on her palm and stared at me. I should have known something was off. You never get that excited about opening the mail. I might have been a teensy-weensy bit possessed. I don't understand. You said Winona Vanderzalm had moved on. Why is she back? And since when does she care about our bills? Here's the thing. There's sort of a new guy in town. Well, a new ghost. For how long? When did this happen? Monday, when I was at the library. And you're only telling me about it now? I told Aunt Zinnia it's not a secret. I just didn't want to worry you. Mom, you let some guy possess you? He was just here, in the house, talking to me, and I didn't even notice? She crossed her arms over her chest. I feel... She couldn't finish the sentence. You and me both. Think about how I feel. I was possessed last night, and I didn't even notice. That would suck. It does suck. She looked at the stack of papers. On the other hand, he was being helpful. By poking into our private business. You did say those bills could use some adult supervision. I looked at the opened mail. I did say that. You could start working on the bills now and we can see if he comes back to help. Wow, you got over your feelings quickly. She reached into the stack of papers and plucked out a green envelope. When a company sends you something in a bright green envelope, that's not good, is it? It could be a very late birthday card for you from the phone company. They wouldn't stamp final notice on a very late birthday card. Point taken. I cleared away the rest of our dinner dishes, wiped the counter, and took a seat at the kitchen island. I couldn't go out with my monster mouth, so I would make the most of my time at home. You'll keep an eye on me? Sure, she said. I'll call Auntie Z if anything scary happens. I gave her a sidelong look. I don't get it. Seeing a CGI gorgon in movies gives you nightmares for weeks, but you're perfectly happy to sit here while your mother invites a ghost to possess her? She shrugged. He seemed decent enough last night. In fact, he invaded my personal space in the bathroom less often than you do. She waved a hand. Go for it. I don't know. This seems different. I'm basically inviting him in. Isn't that better? You're the witch. You should be in control. You're right. I'm the witch. I'm in control. I placed my hands on the stack of papers, palms down. What if it doesn't work? Then we'll both feel silly. You could always pay the phone bill the regular way without being possessed by a ghost. Enough crazy talk. I closed my eyes. You're meditating? I peeked at her with one eye. You have a better idea? She scrunched her face. I should go somewhere else so I'm not staring at you. You know what they say, a watched pot never boils. Don't go too far. Someone needs to supervise me. You'll be fine. She gathered her school materials. I might take Corvin for a walk. And miss all the fun? She backed away, leaving the kitchen. I'll check in on you in a bit. She pointed at the mail. Pay the phone bill. It's the green envelope. I closed my eyes. I heard her walk away. She came back and paused to pat me on the shoulder. You'll do great, she said. I believe in you. I wanted to tell her I believed in her too, but my mouth went numb. She was floating away, leaving on a wave of gauzy gray water. The surrounding sounds disappeared as though a gray velvet curtain was being drawn all around me. All I heard was my own voice. I felt the dryness of the paper under my fingers and nothing else. The rest of the world was gone. It was just me and my bills. And the ghost, or spirit walker. Hello? Another hello returned, but it was only my own voice echoing. Mr. Finance Wizard? Again, the strangely distant echoes. I no longer felt the dry papers under my hands. I slipped away. Chapter 15. Wednesday morning, I awoke feeling refreshed and invigorated. This was especially surprising considering how early it was. I didn't even feel tempted to use magic to toss my alarm clock across the room. I sat up, switched off the noise, and looked at the sticky note affixed to the front of my LED clock's face. Haircuts today. Zoe, 7:30 a.m., Zara, 8 a.m. Beach Hair Shack, 1008 Seahorse Drive. I ran my hands back through my wavy locks. I knew Zoe needed a haircut. Had she booked us appointments, changed my alarm clock time, and written this note? Since the move, we hadn't found a new salon. This Beach Hair Shack place sounded fun, but something was off. The handwriting was not Zoe's. It appeared to be my own writing. I had zero recollection of writing the sticky note, let alone phoning a salon and making the appointments. This had to be the work of my ghost. What was Mr. Finance Wizard up to? I asked out loud. Since when does spending money at a hair salon help you get your financial budget figured out? Is this a spend money to save money situation? The ghost didn't answer. My head felt clean and tidy, like a fresher version of my usual morning head. Mr. Finance Wizard had left me in better shape than he had found me, which wasn't too bad at all. I brushed my teeth before poking my head into Zoe's room. She was already dressed and drawing in her sketchbook on her bed. "You're up early," I said.
For the hair appointments.
"You know about that? Did you write the note in my handwriting?"
No, you told me last night.
I pointed at my chest. "I told you? Me?"
Don't you remember?
I shook my head. "You must have been talking to the ghost." I held up the sticky note and wiggled it. Mr. Finance Wizard must have set this all up. She closed her sketchbook and set it aside.
That really wasn't you last night?
I fidgeted with my skirt. "You couldn't tell?"
I talked to you for a while. You were answering questions.
She frowned.
How is that even possible? I thought ghosts weren't able to say things they hadn't said when they were alive. Aren't they supposed to act like recordings, short phrases at the most? You were talking in lengthy paragraphs last night.
I don't know. Zinnia did say they're only able to replay old conversations.
Then your ghost must have known someone named Zoe who needed a haircut.
I rubbed my chin. Maybe Zinnia was wrong. She did tell me that I probably know more about ghosts than she does. She seemed bummed about it, too.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm also a bit bummed out that we don't know more about these ghosts.
But we are learning by experimenting, right? We're like a couple of ghost scientists.
Ghost scientists, she mused. Those are two words that do not go together.
We're the first pair.
I will alert the Nobel Prize Committee. Did you know there are 5, one for each prize?
Do I look like I just fell off the apple truck? Of course I know that.
Turnip truck,
she said.
You either fell off the turnip truck or fell out of the apple tree. Get your idioms straight, Mom.
I messed that up on purpose so you could gloat all the way to the hairdresser. She jumped off her bed and clapped her hands. Yippee! I looked down at the note affixed to my fingers. Do you think this could be a trap? We could walk in the front door and fall down a trap door into a dungeon.
What's wrong with that? I love dungeons.
You are a special kind of weird.
I am. Now let me see your tongue.
I stuck out my tongue.
Pink again, she reported. Now open wide and say ah.
Ah.
She peered in. Your teeth and gums are 99% back to normal. You've got a little staining, but people will just think you're a coffee addict.
They wouldn't be wrong. A bird chirped outside. We both turned our heads and checked the time on our bedside clock. Time to go, we said in unison. She laughed while I said, we can pick up breakfast on our way to the hair place. Zoe grabbed her book bag and hoisted it onto her shoulder.
You know of a good bakery along the way?
This is Wisteria, I said. There's one on every block.
We could go to that gingerbread house of baking that everyone raves about.
Or whatever bakery we happen to come across on the way, I said. There was no need to subject my daughter to meeting a gorgon on top of everything else. On our way out, I wrestled her heavy book bag away from her so I could carry it. A mother has to look out for her kid. We arrived at the beach hair shack at 1008 Seahorse Drive 5 minutes ahead of our first appointment. As soon as we saw the place, the name of the salon made perfect sense. It was in a casual shack-like building with a view of the beach. According to the signs on the front door, they specialized in styling hair to look tousled by ocean breezes and kissed by the summer sun. Zoe breathed excitedly.
That's exactly the look I've always wanted, she said.
Really? Bleach, streaks, and bedhead?
It's a good thing you're a librarian because nobody would go to your hair salon.
Ouch! I pulled open the front door. It was a wood-framed screen door that opened with a loud creak. Inside, we found a small waiting area and only 2 styling chairs. Nobody else was there. Zoe whispered to me,
Are they even open?
I called out, Hello? An interior door creaked open, revealing a glimpse of a lofted bed and kitchenette. The salon space was so tiny because the back half of the building was a residence. A woman emerged to greet us. She was tiny, barely 5 feet tall. She had the hair of a mermaid, waist-length and wavy, with a variety of colorful hues ranging from burnt sugar to cherry blossom and daffodil yellow. Some strands were braided and fastened with tiny barrettes that resembled swallowtail butterflies. Judging by the lines on her face, she was 50 years older than me, yet she dressed and moved as fluidly as someone in her 20s.
"Blessed morning to you both," she said with a bow.
"And a blessed morning to you," I replied. "We're the Riddles."
"I know who you are," she said serenely.
"Our first appointment is for 7:30. We're not too early, are we?"
"The sun never rises too early," she said.
"Right." I glanced over at Zoe. She looked amused by the eccentric woman. I raised my eyebrows meaningfully. "Do you trust this kooky woman with a pair of scissors near your head?" Zoe shrugged, which I took to mean yes. The hairdresser was silent. Her eyes were closed, and she was pressing her small hands in front of her chest with palms together as though in prayer. She looked like a butterfly in repose, with her form-fitting catsuit worn underneath a gauzy silk shawl dyed with teal and ocean blue shades. I gave Zoe the look again. She shrugged a second time. The hairdresser opened her eyes and spoke, her voice like tinkling bells.
"My name is Morgana Fair, and you must be the Riddle sisters."
"Sisters?" I nearly cackled. "Close enough for horseshoes and hand grenades." Zoe, always the stickler for accuracy, corrected her.
"We're actually mother and daughter."
Morgana replied.
"A blind man should like to see the difference."
She pointed at Zoe.
"Let's take Mom first."
I let my cackle out as I elbowed my daughter. "Go ahead, Mom. Age before beauty." Zoe's mouth was open. She was used to having people mistake us for sisters, but this was the first time someone had mistaken her for my mother. It served her right for the growth spurt that had made her catch up to me in height. Morgana beckoned Zoe with fluttering fingers.
"Come and take a seat on my magical, mystical, twirly chair."
She waved for Zoe to follow her over to one of the 2 hairdressing stations. The chair looked about 60 years old, but freshly upholstered in vinyl the color of green sea glass. I gave Zoe an enthusiastic shove. "Have fun, Mom. I'll sit over here and read magazines, if they have any suitable for teenagers such as myself." Zoe shot me a dirty look as she walked over to the green chair. Behind her back, Morgana gave me a wink to tell me she knew very well which one of us was the mother. I loved our new hairdresser already. While Zoe and Morgana talked about hairstyles and conditioning routines, I settled on a breezy wicker lounge chair near the front door. I glanced around at my surroundings, trying to piece a story together. Mr. Finance Wizard must have sent me there for a reason. What could it be? And who was he anyway? Was he a spirit walker whose body was relaxing in a recliner, still very much alive? Or was he a ghost? If he was a ghost, what unfinished business did he have keeping him around? Zinnia had told me that ghosts were like the living in some ways. They all reacted differently to change, not unlike how some people react differently to retirement. Some retirees embrace leisure activities, whereas others take up leadership roles in service of the community or get into hobbies that are just as consuming as jobs. Time would tell what sort of ghost Mr. Finance Wizard was. The haunting seemed benign. The guy had booked me a hair appointment. Very thoughtful, but why had he sent me to this place? I turned to look behind the seating area. The wall was paneled in old, dry-looking wood painted in pale green. It was charmingly decorated with seashells and framed photos that dated back a number of decades, judging by the hairstyles. I saw Morgana in several photos. In one, she was cutting a huge ribbon with oversized scissors. The photo had been taken at the opening of the Beach Hair Shack 5 decades ago. Wow. Even if Morgana Fair had been a young entrepreneur of 25 at the time, that made her 75. Now I was even more impressed with the woman's vigor. I scanned my way over to the handwritten signs taped to the front of the small payment counter. There were the usual notes about walk-ins being welcome, a list of the fees for various services, as well as the types of payment accepted. One sign in particular caught my eye. Early bird special. Wednesdays before 9 a.m., half-price cuts. Mystery solved. I reached for some magazines, smiling to myself. Mr. Finance Wizard had sent us there to save money on our haircuts. According to the other signs, Morgana's regular rates were already very reasonable. Today's visit would cost only a quarter of what we used to spend in our former city. Keep up the good work, Mr. Finance Wizard. With that mystery solved, I lost myself in the fashion magazines. They were a few months out of date, but the trends were still new to me. Having spent the last 16 years supporting myself and my daughter while upgrading my education, I hadn't kept up with hemlines or celebrity style. As I leafed through the magazines, I chortled to myself. Since when had people become so obsessed with having skinny calves and large buttocks? Oh, but according to the magazines, the large buttocks were only acceptable on musicians, actresses, and reality TV stars. Regular, unfamous women with curvy posteriors were still herded toward A-line skirts and bikini bottoms with fringe to minimize their shapeliness. At least until the next magazine I picked up. In that one, there was a feature about regular moms and housewives who were hiring professional photographers to take old-fashioned pinup-style pictures, accentuating their womanly curves. I had to smile at the cute retro images of women climbing stepladders while holding vintage watering jugs. The static in the air shifted. The creaky screen door opened and a petite young woman came in. She went straight to the counter. Hipster chick. I recognized her fedora hat and her designer label shoulder bag. Her library book was the first I had seen with missing words. More had sprung up since then, but I had to wonder, was she connected to the magical outbreak? Was she patient zero? My mind was buzzing, my ears alert to the soft scuffing sounds of the hipster chick's shoes on the old wood floor as she swayed impatiently, waiting to get the hairdresser's attention. Morgana had both hands buried in my daughter's red locks. She glanced over at the visitor and smiled in recognition, but she made no movement toward the counter. I couldn't take my eyes off hipster chick. What was she up to? I suspected there were other witches living in town, but Zinnia had tight lips. Was this girl one of them? Could she do magic? I'd screwed up with the bookworm. She might have cast a spell that went funny. Then again, if she were a witch, she wouldn't cast a spell to erase words and then complain about it to strangers. That wasn't logical. She suddenly whirled to face me. She had a defiant look in her golden brown eyes. When she locked gazes with me, it seemed the wicker chair beneath me gave up and I was suddenly sinking down into darkness. All the air disappeared. Chapter 16. I found myself in darkness. It was glistening and wet with 1,000 eyes. The darkness was continuous like a tunnel or a mouth. It was a terrible gaping chasm that sucked life and love and hope all the way down, down, down. I felt the sinking sensation of loss as the darkness closed around me. I landed in a slimy place. The walls were slick enough to glisten in the thin light of some window or lamp I couldn't locate. And the walls were moving. Were they breathing? Had I been swallowed whole by some living monstrosity? No, the walls weren't moving as whole parts. Only small segments were moving, shifting around with a rhythm like that of an anthill or a beehive. And then, inside this dark space, I was no longer alone. I heard two people talking. A female was saying, "Project Erasure is coming together faster than planned." A male with a deep voice replied, "Not fast enough." "Patience," the female cooed. "No need to rush. Look at where rushing our acquisitions has gotten me." She let out a bitter laugh. "Not to mention letting my emotions lead me right into a trap. I'm such an idiot." The male didn't argue or offer reassurance. The female kept on laughing bitterly, crazily. Where was I? This dark place had no smell or temperature. It was a void containing nothing but these two disembodied voices. I pulled back, tugging my energy away from the void. I could see a fringe of golden brown encircling the darkness. Golden brown. And the fringe was a circular, brown around black in a circle? Suddenly I knew. The last thing I'd seen in the regular world was the brown eyes of Hipster Chick. What's that saying? The eyes are the windows to the soul? Somehow I was inside Hipster Chick's eyes, or just beyond them inside her head, and she had other people inside her head, at least 2 people. Was this how it worked when I had a spirit inside my head? The female voice said, "Is it cold in here? I just felt a chill. I think someone's listening." The male replied,
"You're paranoid."
Suddenly, a third voice rang out in the darkness. "Leave me alone!" she cried. It sounded like Hipster Chick. "Go away! I'm not crazy! I'm not crazy!" She kept chanting it. "I'm not crazy! I'm not crazy!" The female laughed cruelly. "Keep telling yourself that, sweetheart, for all the good it'll do. We're all just a little bit crazy, us females. Isn't that what the world tells us? You find something that makes you happy and people use it against you." The male chuckled.
"If you say so."
Hipster Chick's chanting finally faded into the background. The female said to her companion, "I can't wait to get this host erased and take full control of this fresh young body."
"I'll be next if it works,"
said the other one.
"It's been years since I enjoyed the pleasures of the physical world. I've been bottled up for far too long."
"I can't wait to see you in person," the female said, practically purring.
"You'll be disappointed. Did you see the hot redhead sitting in the wicker chair? That's my type. Exactly my type."
I heard my own voice in the darkness. "Me? No way! Leave me out of this!" The male laughed.
"Zara, how did you get in here?"
"Who are you?" I demanded. My voice was more shrill than theirs, and it echoed like crazy. He kept laughing.
"Oh, you'll find out soon enough. I can't believe you found me."
"I know you," I said. "You're the man I saw in the library, in the financial planning section. You're Mr. Finance Wizard."
"Who?"
"Were you in the Wisteria Public Library on Monday?" The female interjected. "Why are you even talking to her? She's just a nosy witch who's going to get what's coming to her as soon as I get out of here." The male chuckled.
"Way to tip your hand. Now be quiet and let the grown-ups talk."
She made a muffled sound like someone with a gag over her mouth.
"Zara,"
said the male,
"I owe you an apology. I didn't realize you were so strong or I would have shielded this place."
"That's right," I said. "I'm very powerful and I know what you're up to."
"And what exactly is that?"
"Something bad." He laughed again.
"You don't know, but let me give you a hint. I wasn't in your library on Monday. Let's just say I don't get out much these days."
"If you're not my ghost, who is he? Which one of you is the spirit walker?" He didn't answer. "Hello?" My voice echoed in the darkness. There was a clicking sound, and then the male voice said,
"Uh-oh, party's over. My captor is wise to my tricks."
The female said, "Don't you dare forget me here in the darkness."
"I never forget a favor. Your loyalty and dedication will be rewarded."
More clicking sounds.
"Everybody out of the pool."
With a pop of brightness, I was on my way out. I saw the golden brown of Hipster Chicks's irises, and then her whole face. She looked both horrified and confused. I couldn't see my own face, but I was pretty sure my expression matched hers. Did she know I'd been inside her mind, that I knew about the other 2 entities inside there? The darkness of the journey still clung to me. I tried to shrug away the feeling, but my shoulders wouldn't move. My body was locked up, frozen, still caught in the dreamlike state I must have entered to journey into her mind. Hipster Chick narrowed her eyes at me. Either she knew I had been inside her head just now, or she really didn't like the look of me. And someone was touching me, tapping on my leg. Chapter 17. Hipster Chick gave me one last sneering look before turning her back to me. The paralysis that had gripped my body suddenly released. The wicker chair squeaked under me as I squirmed in my seat. Sunshine was hitting me in the face, glaring in my eyes. After the darkness, I had never been so happy to have the sun in my eyes. I breathed in the scent of the ocean mingled with the hairstyling products. Someone tapped my thigh again. I looked around. Nobody was there, not even a semi-transparent person. I did, however, have a plastic container of bookworm dough in the pocket of my skirt. Had it been tapping me? "Morgana," said Hipster Chick. She was tapping the counter impatiently. "I left something here yesterday." "Yes, you did," the hairdresser answered. "You ran out of here." She kept combing and trimming my daughter's hair. "Sorry," Hipster Chick said. "I don't know what I was thinking. Getting bangs? I must have been crazy. Sometimes the voices in my head tell me to do things." Morgana gave her a curious look. "Voices in your head?" "Just an expression." She tapped the counter again. "I just needed to get my phone. I left it here, didn't I? My memory has been weird lately, but I'm pretty sure I had it when I got here yesterday, but not when I left." Morgana smiled. "Do you mean that little blue thing that makes the funny noises? I thought you left that squawk box here to drive me crazy." "That's it. My phone's in a blue case. The screen is all nasty and cracked. Dad's working on something right now, so the budget's a little tight, but things are going to work out." "I'm surprised you weren't banging on my door before I opened," Morgana said teasingly. "Aren't you young people addicted to your little squawk boxes? Don't you get the shakes when you're separated for more than 10 minutes? The young woman forced another laugh. "Pretty much," she said. Morgana excused herself from trimming my daughter's hair and floated over to the reception desk. She dug around in the drawer before handing over Hipster Chick's phone. "Here's your squawk box," Morgana said. "Will you tell Perry I send him my best? He needs to get out of the house more. I hardly ever see him anymore. You know how he is when he's working on a new project." "And has he shared with you the details of this new secret project?" "Oh, did I say new project? I meant he's dabbling on a bunch of random things." She tucked the phone into her bag and took a few steps backward. Morgana came out from behind the counter and took tentative steps toward the girl. "Josephine, are you sleeping well? You have dark circles under your eyes. They're darker than yesterday." "No, they're not any darker," Hipster Chick, real name Josephine, said defensively. "Wait here," Morgana said soothingly. "I'll give you a sea salt candle holder. It will help you sleep. You do know those voices in your head aren't real, don't you?" "I'm fine, really," Josephine said, sounding irritated. "You're tense." Morgana grabbed her by the wrist. "And your pulse is racing." Josephine yanked her hand away and took a few more steps backward. She stepped on my toes, lost her balance, and fell backward right onto my lap. Suddenly, I felt a surprising jolt of familiarity. I knew this girl. I hadn't even known her name was Josephine until just now, yet I knew her. I knew she wouldn't take a bath unless her rubber ducky was there, and she wouldn't go to bed unless she had her stuffed bunny, and she wouldn't eat breakfast cereal unless it was brand name. I knew her the way a parent would. The girl jumped up, spewing apologies. "I'm so clumsy," she said to me. "And forgetful," I said with surprising vehemence. My mouth moved with a mind of its own. "Little Jo, head in the clouds, leaving things behind everywhere she goes." She gave me a startled look, and for good reason. A complete stranger had just scolded her, seemingly with knowledge of her bad habits. but I couldn't explain myself. Hey, Josephine, I'm a witch, and I'm possessed by a ghost right now, a ghost who apparently knows you well. Also, I was just inside your head, and I heard those two people in there, a man and a woman, scheming about stealing bodies, starting with yours. What do you think of that? That can't be good. Are you a witch too? Should we team up and solve this mystery together? But I couldn't say that. I couldn't say anything. As we stared at each other, her shock shifted to irritation. What are you looking at, lady? She crossed her arms and gave me an angry look. I apologize for tripping over your feet. What more do you want? The look on her face triggered something in my ghost. Mr. Finance Wizard took over for a good scolding. Just for you to finally learn from your mistakes, he said with my mouth. You sound just like my father, she said. Do you know him? Your father is a sensible man, the ghost replied. I don't get it. Who are you, lady? Are you dating my dad? The ghost gave control back to me. Yes, I said. I mean, no. Everyone was staring at me. Morgana, Josephine, Zoe, who was still sitting in the hairdressing chair. Was I dating Josephine's father? Yes or no? I smiled at the other three women. It's complicated. How? Josephine blinked repeatedly and swooned. She caught herself on the counter, barely, and as she caught her breath, she gave us confused looks. Joe? Morgana looked concerned. What are we talking about? Josephine kept blinking and forcing her eyes to open wider. I can't remember what I'm doing. Why am I even here? I keep forgetting. My mind's being erased. Is this what it feels like to be crazy? Morgana handed her a bottle of water. Drink this, Joe. You're probably dehydrated. You young people drink too much coffee. Josephine thanked her and took a sip. I flipped open a magazine and pretended to be reading it, minding my own business. Josephine said to Morgana, I'm trying to get my life together. Honestly, I really am. I know, the hairdresser said. Soon everything will be different. I've been so forgetful lately. Morgana spoke softly. Forgetfulness is no sin. If anything, forgetfulness is the cure for our sorrows. Her eyes wrinkled with truth and wisdom as she smiled. Josephine set the empty water bottle on the counter and straightened her hipster hat. I hate to disagree with you, Morgana, but money is the only cure for our sorrows. She walked toward the door, pausing to look at me. Sorry again for, I don't know, something? No problem, I said. The poor thing. And then she was gone with whatever crazy stuff was happening inside her head. Morgana was back with Zoe, cooing over what a lovely head of red hair she had. Zoe caught my eye in the mirror and silently mouthed the words, "What was that?" I mouthed the word, "Ghost." My daughter nodded, looking concerned for all of 3 seconds, and then went back to chatting with Morgana about texturizing her hair to control the natural wave. I sighed and looked down at the magazine on my lap. The pages of the magazine were entirely blank. White. I flipped through the magazine. Every page was either partially or completely blank. I rolled up the magazine and slipped it into my purse for examining later. I picked up another magazine and flipped through. It was normal. I picked up 2 more and riffled through. All the other magazines appeared to be intact. I thought of the secret thing the 2 voices in Joe's head had been discussing before I'd spoken up and blown my cover. The female said, Project Erasure is coming together faster than planned. Then the male said it wasn't fast enough. Project Eraser. At least I had a name. That was something. I had a lot of some things. First, I had words being erased from library books, business cards, and magazines. At least 2 of those things were connected to Josephine, aka Hipster Chick. Was she my patient zero? Second, I knew she had voices inside her head, ones that were real enough for me to hear, a man and a woman who were plotting to erase bodies. Third, I knew Josephine's father was working on something to get her money. Fourth, I had a strong hunch her father was the semi-transparent man I called Mr. Finance Wizard. So how did all these things add up? Was Mr. Wizard working on an invention that let people travel outside of their bodies? That had to be it. And then other people would steal the bodies when they were empty. Sure, that sounded exactly like the plot of a sci-fi horror movie. Who was the crazy one now? It was a shame the voices in Josephine's head hadn't named their secret project something more informative. Just plain erasure was so vague. They could have called it something more self-descriptive, such as Project Erasure of Voting Ballots or Project Erasure of Valuable Picasso Paintings. I wondered if I could erase anything in the world, where would I start? The comments section under YouTube videos? Then billboards and other outdoor advertising. Would it work on freckles? My thoughts were disrupted by the hairdresser calling out, "Next!" Morgana had finished trimming Zoe's hair and was calling me to her chair. I walked over and climbed into the green seat. Morgana wrapped a protective plastic cape around me. She paused as though frozen, staring down at her hand. I watched her as she walked over to the sink, washed her hands, and continued to stare at her right hand, lifting it up and down slowly, tracking it with her eyes. I rotated my chair and looked over at Zoe. She hadn't noticed the hairdresser's strange behavior because she was using her phone to take photos of herself with her new haircut. I wondered if she was taking the pictures for new friends or her old friends Francie and Jade back in the city. Morgana returned, still staring at her hand. I asked, "Is everything okay? Your friend seemed upset about something."
"Little Jo will be fine," Morgana said. "She's always had a flair for the dramatic. That's how it always has been with the daughters of Amora."
Amora? I don't know her. Does she have a big family? Morgana laughed.
"Very big. Some say everyone's related to her in one way or another."
She combed my hair and sprayed on water to dampen it for cutting. "This woman," I said. "Amora." Morgana laughed again.
"It's a very old story. I will tell you another time. And I think you will find yourself in this tale as a daughter of Mara."
"Right."
"Shh, let me focus. Quiet your mind, little fox."
I raised an eyebrow at her in the mirror. I understood now why Morgana's haircuts were so cheap. You have to offer a bargain if you're going to be so nutty. As she worked, she kept glancing at the top of her right hand and letting her gaze linger. Finally, I had to ask, "Is there something wrong with your hand?"
"Do you know how people say they'd know something like the back of their hand? I was just thinking about what an odd expression that is."
Most idioms are a bit odd.
"I don't know the back of my hand very well at all. Once upon a time, I had a little fairy tattooed on the back of my hand, and now it's gone."
Another clue. Project Erasure strikes again. Has it been erased?
"No, silly."
She whipped her tiny hands up into my hair and began massaging my scalp.
"It must have faded away over the years, so slowly that I never noticed."
Or maybe something blew through here and erased your tattoo. We're lucky it didn't take our minds. Morgana Fair smiled at me in the mirror. Chapter 18.
"I love my new beach hair,"
Zoe cooed as we left the beach hair shack. If I were to tell you that was a half-price bargain haircut, would you love it more or less?
"Even more,"
she said. Me too. She looked over at me and tilted her head.
"Yours looks more like bedhead. You should have let her put in more styling mud."
She twirled one of her tiny braids, which Morgana had fastened with a butterfly elastic.
"And a few mermaid braids."
"Bohemian doesn't suit me," I said. "My look is more classic."
"Classic what?"
I fluffed out my voluminous skirts and kicked up my lace boots. "Classic Anne of Green Gables," I said.
"You're right. How did I never see this before? You could move to Prince Edward Island and become a celebrity and performer. They're always in need of genuine redheads. You already have the wardrobe."
You want to move again? We are barely unpacked.
No, she said hesitantly. Wisteria is great, but...
She trailed off. But what?
Nothing.
She looked around, whipping her fluffy beach hair.
What street are we on?
We stopped to read the street signs and figure out which way to turn for the high school. We resumed walking. Zoe continued to fluff her hair and whip her head to make it fly out. She didn't care it was a half-price hairdo. After a few minutes, she asked,
"What was going on back there anyway?"
She lowered her voice.
"Did you get a visit from your new ghost?"
The sun slipped behind a cloud. As my skin cooled without the sunshine, I thought of the interior of Joe's mind. Had I felt things wriggling around in that darkness? The walls had been like the inside of a machine, but one that was alive. What did you call a living machine? A brain? Well, duh. If I'd been inside Hipster Chick's head, I'd been wandering around her brain, which was both alive and a machine, of sorts.
"Mom,"
Zoe sounded concerned.
"what happened?"
"Nothing for you to worry about," I said lightly. "Let me deal with the odd ghost or two, and you keep on getting those stellar grades at school."
"Sure thing."
She sped up, pulling away from me. She walked faster and faster. "Hey," I called after her, "I'm not really dressed for jogging." She turned and walked backward, facing me.
"The library's that way."
She pointed to a side street.
"I can make it to school on my own."
"Too embarrassed to be seen with your mother?"
"Of course not. It's just that there's no need for you to backtrack."
"I don't mind."
"Thanks for the haircut."
She turned and picked up the pace, moving way faster than I wanted to move that early in the morning.
"Have fun at work. I'll see you at home."
I waved goodbye, not that she noticed. As she rounded the corner, I caught a glimpse of the 12-year-old version of her, insisting she could walk the last few blocks to school on her own. She'd always been so independent. I would agree and then follow at a distance just to make sure she was safe. Even now that she was 16, I felt the urge to follow, to keep her in my sight. As I watched after her, my heart did that mother thing and broke just a little. My baby appreciated me, but she didn't need me. One day when I was gone, how would Zoe remember me? How would she remember today? Would it be the beautiful sunny day she got beach hair at a kooky lady's wooden shack? Or the day her mother wasn't a very good mother because she was busy talking to ghosts and getting sucked into other people's business? By the time I got to work, I'd forgotten about my hair, as well as all the weird stuff at Morgana's. All that stuff paled in comparison to worrying about being a good mother. Ghosts? Take a number. I was too busy trying to find work-life balance. No, work-life magic balance. I went straight to the staff lounge and made the day's first pot of coffee. Frank came in, took one look at me, and made a comment about the sort of activities one might engage in to rumple up one's hair. "It's not bedhead," I said, "or whatever else you're thinking. I went to the hairdresser and she backcombed it for a beach-tousled look." "Beach-tousled? More like bed-wrestled." I snorted. People with one-track minds see what they want to see. Frank poured a coffee and squinted at me with one eye. He had a tough time keeping both eyes open before his first cup of coffee. "Why would you get a haircut this early anyway?" "Early bird special. I got a great deal." "Great deal or not, you'd never catch me up that early. My beauty sleep is worth more than money." I gave him half a shrug. "Not everyone can afford to be as beautiful as you, Frank Wonder." He struck a Southern Belle pose. He fixed up his coffee the way he liked it. "Who gave you that beach-tousled locks?" "A woman named Morgana Fair. She's got a half-price Wednesday morning special." "Morgana Fair? But her rates are already so reasonable." "You know her?" "Everyone knows Morgana. She's been around here forever. She might even be older than Winona Vanderzalm was. They used to go out together sometimes." "They were friends?"
I don't know what they were, but they gave me the heebie-jeebies whenever I saw them together. Maybe it was ageism or sexism or both. Maybe I should wash my mouth out with soap immediately, but they always looked to me like a pair of witches in search of a third witch, so they could form a triad and stir up some cauldrons together.
Frank, I don't know if that's ageism, but it's not very nice. He hung his head.
I'll go wash my mouth out with soap.
No need, sir. I'm letting you off with a warning. I gave him a serious look. This time. We finished our coffee, then punched in our time cards with 2 loud kerchunks. It was strange that a quiet place like a library had such a loud time card system, but I did enjoy how satisfying it felt to punch in or out. The loud kerchunk stirred up the pride I felt in my job. I always stood taller when I was on the clock. We unlocked the front door and went through the day's opening procedures and got to work. A while later, I started researching something for myself. I didn't like doing personal research while I was working, but it would have roused more suspicion if I had used the computer terminals on my coffee break. I had to know more about the young woman I had seen at the hairdresser's. She was connected not just to the library book with disappearing words, but also a blanked magazine and now a missing tattoo. Plus, she was my only solid lead on Mr. Finance Wizard. According to our computer, we had 3 copies of the Rockstar memoir. One had been checked out and returned by someone named Josephine Pressman. Our system didn't have anything as high-tech as photos associated with patron accounts, but it had to be her. I glanced over my shoulder to make sure nobody was around to witness what I was about to do. As a professional librarian, I take confidentiality very seriously. No person wants their internet search history to be public knowledge. The same is true of their reading history. People will borrow books they wouldn't be caught dead with on their shelves at home. While I might find it amusing to know that a certain patron has paid for 2 copies of 50 Shades of You-Know-What due to dropping both books into her bathtub, that's for me and Frank to giggle over and not for the general public. On a more serious note, there are instances where checkout history needs to stay secret and the stakes are higher than social embarrassment. For example, just this morning, I helped an unwed young lady with a newborn baby in her arms find some books about paternity testing and parental rights. An hour later, I helped a worried-looking 50-something man check out several relationship books, including, coincidentally enough, one titled Rebuilding Your Marriage After an Affair. He kept twisting his wedding band nervously while I processed his stack of books.
They really have a book for everything,
he said, and I'd agreed.
This is for a friend,
he insisted, and again I agreed. As he left, I wished him a good day and the best of luck.
I'll probably be back for some of your divorce books,
he said heavily. I assured him I would help him as much as I could should it come to that. My promise seemed to lift his chin a few degrees. And isn't this exactly what most of us want from our careers? Not just a paycheck, but the opportunity to lift someone's chin a few degrees? But I digress. Back to my amateur sleuthing. Not only did I locate Josephine Pressman in our database, but there was another Pressman named Perry. He resided at the same address as Josephine. The account history went back a good 40 years. He was the father. According to our records, Perry Pressman's book history included a vast number of titles about stock trading and personal finance. He had to be the ghost or spirit walker I'd been calling Mr. Finance Wizard. I jotted down his address. The pen was slippery in my hand. I was sweating. I did an internet search on Perry Pressman. After some cross-referencing to narrow the results, I found the guy. Perry Pressman, a longtime resident of Wisteria, was the founder and editor of the Penny Pincher Gazette, a local classified advertisement circular and coupon guide. Penny Pincher? That must have been what the semi-transparent man meant when he had pinched his fingers together during our mimed conversation. He'd been pinching imaginary pennies. The Penny Pincher Gazette shut down 2 years ago due to changing technologies in the coupon industry. In other words, the internet. There was a photo accompanying the article. A jolt of recognition shot through me. This was the man I'd seen on Monday. I'd already felt certain I'd found my guy, but seeing the photo cranked it up a level. In the photo, he wore a plaid button-up shirt, faded from repeated washing but crisply ironed. He had narrow shoulders and a rectangular face, angular with loose neck folds. His gray hair tufted up over one ear as though he had cut it himself and missed a spot. Given his love for pinching pennies, he probably did cut his own hair. Was he dead? There was no obituary, and Morgana had asked Josephine about him. He had to be the spirit walker Chet was looking for. Unless he had died elsewhere and his family didn't know yet. The young woman did have other things on her mind, and inside her mind, she might not have noticed her father was missing. What if that was the thing she was worried about forgetting? Loose puzzle pieces clicked together, and my mind created a story to explain everything. Sometimes a traumatic event can cause memory loss. What if Perry had died and only Josephine knew? What if his body was lying somewhere, decaying, and his daughter was wandering around town being forgetful and hearing voices in her head? She might have been trying to erase her own memories. I looked down at the scrap of paper with the pressman address. I had half a mind to toss it into the garbage and forget about the matter. The man's daughter would eventually figure things out, and if the voices in her head were of her own creation, she needed the kind of help that didn't come from a witch. Then again, what if a witch was exactly what she needed? Perry had come to me for a reason. No, he had come to the library for a reason. Perhaps he just happened to bump into me. I didn't know. Thinking about it wasn't getting me anywhere. I grabbed my phone and called Chet's number. Chapter 19. I walked into Dreamland Coffee and looked around for Chet. I'd phoned him from the library to talk about his Spirit Walker case, but he'd refused to discuss it over the phone. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop on the outskirts of town. I'd taken a taxi to get there on time and ended up early. He wasn't there yet. The coffee shop was quiet, with a big crowd of seniors clearing out just as I arrived. I chatted with the owner, a woman named Maisie, while she steamed a latte for me. Then I took my mug over to a quiet corner and waited for Chet to arrive. The front door opened. An older woman with very long gray hair walked in. She paused to give some verbal commands to her companions, two very large dogs, who sat obediently outside the door. She walked up to the front counter and ordered a mint mocha and a smoked meat sandwich. I couldn't stop staring at her, especially her hair. It fell down below her waist and seemed far too gray for her age. She turned her head and met my gaze. She jerked her head slightly as though jolted by recognition. Did she know me? I didn't know her. She looked away quickly. The door opened again and Chet walked in. The gray-haired woman turned to him, smiling. "More?" she said gruffly. "I hope Jasper and Coco didn't give you a hard time."
"Those little puppies? Not at all."
"How are you? I almost hate to ask, but how's your father? I haven't seen him around much." Chet glanced over at me, nodded, then looked at the woman again.
"Don is about as well as can be expected. He has his good days and his bad days. Sometimes I feel like I'm raising two kids."
"They call it the sandwich generation," she said, "looking after aging parents plus children. I feel for you. I really do." His shoulders lifted up in a shrug and didn't come down.
"Life doesn't always work out as planned."
"Right. Has there been any change?"
"No change."
"Such a shame." She made several tisk-tisk sounds. "Such a shame," she repeated. Chet cleared his throat and looked past her at the food waiting on the counter.
"I'll let you get your meal,"
he said gruffly.
"Good to see you again."
The woman took her plate and mug, gave me a quick glance, and went outside to sit at a sidewalk table. Her two enormous dogs begged for scraps. She lovingly fed them bits of meat from her sandwich. Chet joined me at my table. He had a mug of black coffee. "What's the plan?" I asked. "Are we here to spy on that lady? Who is she?"
"Zara, you're the one who called me. You said you might have seen the person I'm looking for?"
I kept staring through the window at the gray-haired woman sitting outside. She looked so familiar. Her angular face and her narrow nose reminded me of someone. Chet waved a hand in front of my face.
Never mind about her.
Is that lady a witch? A shifter? She looked at me like she knew who I was. Did you tell her about me? He sighed.
I believe she's friends with your aunt, he said. She probably recognized the family likeness.
Great, I said. Anyone who knows my aunt and what she is just has to take one look at me and they know all my secrets too. What's the use in me trying to be careful? I might as well buy a pointy hat and start carrying a broom. He looked at me over his coffee mug as he lifted it to his lips.
Tough day?
I've been struggling with work-life magic balance.
Did something happen with Zoe?
She didn't want me to walk her all the way to school.
Ouch.
My baby doesn't need me.
Is that all?
You'll see, Chet. You'll see when Corvin doesn't need you anymore. You'll see. I trailed off, remembering our situations were not exactly the same. He had a parent who also needed his care. I was being rude. Never mind my grumbling, I said with a quick smile. A cup of coffee is all I need. I lifted my cup and bumped it against his mug. Cheers. Amusement flickered in his green eyes.
Cheers.
We sipped our drinks. Then I set up the sound bubble spell to be sure we had our privacy. The interior of the coffee shop was empty, and the owner had disappeared into the back room, but it was good practice to not get comfortable blabbing about magic and ghosts without protection. I told Chet about everything that had happened recently. There had been the disappearing ink on Saturday, the appearance of Perry Pressman at the library on Monday, and my subsequent possession, then the strange encounter with his daughter Josephine at the hairdresser's. Chet stopped me.
You went through her eyes into her mind? And you heard two other people in there talking about a machine?
They didn't say it was a machine. The female called it Project Erasure.
What did she sound like? Young, old, weak, strong?
I had to think about it. Old? I'm not sure. The way she mocked Josephine, it wasn't the way another woman of the same age would. I'd say she was at least a generation older than the host. Chet's eyebrows raised. He gave me an appreciative look.
That's very good deductive reasoning, he said. You'd make a fine agent, Riddle.
You think? He gazed into my eyes.
We would make a great team, you and I.
Hunting down ghosts and monsters?
Someone's got to do it.
I chortled, like I need another job.
You wouldn't like it anyway.
He slouched and looked down at his coffee.
It's a tough line of work.
Cheer up. At least I found your spirit walker. He slouched even more.
No, you haven't.
Perry Pressman isn't your guy?
Not even close.
So he's not a spirit walker? He's not doing astral projection, roaming around as a disembodied spirit while his body's safe and sound at home in a recliner?
Sounds to me like he's just a standard ghost.
Just a standard ghost. Huh. I don't know why I feel so disappointed. He's only the second ghost I've met so far. Is it normal to get jaded so quickly once you know magic's real?
I wouldn't know,
Chet said. You've always known about magic? Ever since you were young? He nodded.
I don't know what it's like to not know. You're lucky that you get to experience the world both ways.
Lucky me. I took another sip of my latte. The coffee at Dreamland was good. Now, what do you suppose I should do about my standard ghost? My aunt says they stick around for a reason. He's probably been murdered or something awful like that. Sometime after Saturday when he was on the phone with his daughter, assuming she hadn't hallucinated the phone call.
Did you hear the phone ring or buzz?
I closed my eyes and thought back. I'm pretty sure there was an incoming call. I remember the screen was cracked. I opened my eyes. Sorry, I'm not a better eyewitness.
You're doing fine. When I get back to the office, I'll start up a case file and get somebody to pop by his house to check for signs of a body. You may be right about his daughter being in denial.
Do you think she killed him? She was talking about money. She might have been eager to get her hands on her inheritance or maybe a life insurance policy. That's always a good motive. Remember, that's why I thought you might have killed your neighbor. He frowned.
You did?
Just for a minute, barely. Anyone with half a brain would have at least considered the possibility. He stared into his black coffee.
Things are not always as they seem. Pressman might have died of natural causes. He could be decomposing in a room of the house where his daughter doesn't usually go. She might be, as you guessed, in complete denial. There's a type of shock people go into when they can't let go.
He flicked his eyes up to meet mine.
And can you blame them? It's hard to let go.
It can be hard to let go. He kept staring into his black coffee like it was a place he wanted to go. What's going on, Chet?
What do you mean?
You seem even more tense and uncomfortable than usual. He made a face.
What do you mean, than usual? I'm always easygoing. I'm laid back.
I burst out laughing. He didn't. I stopped and stared at him. Oh, you're not kidding, I said. You actually believe you're laid back.
Considering all the responsibilities I have, I'm Mr. Chill.
I stifled more laughter. Mr. Chill. Yes, I see it now. He pulled back in his chair, shaking his head.
I shouldn't have gotten you involved in any of this.
Too late. I'm here and you're stuck with me. What's the deal with the disappearing ink? If Perry's dead and he's the one doing that, does it have something to do with his name? Chet looked down at the table and frowned. Perry Pressman? I said. Pressman is the title of the person who runs a printing press, and those printing presses use ink. It's kind of poetic in a way. Do you think ghosts are always so metaphorical? Chet flicked some stray crumbs off our table. You're not listening, I said. You don't have any interest whatsoever in my ghost or the disappearing ink.
I'll start a case, he muttered. I'll get someone to look into it.
What about the two people I heard talking inside the daughter's head? Is one of them your spirit walker?
Those voices weren't real. The girl's probably crazy. Forget about what you thought you heard and don't go digging around inside people's heads. You won't like what you find.
I waved my hand in front of his face. Is that why you're staring at those crumbs like they're a Van Gogh? Are you afraid to make eye contact with me? Do you think I'll crawl in through your beautiful green eyes and start digging around? He jerked his chin up and met my eyes with a fiery vengeance. He was daring me to climb through his open windows, straight into him. And me, being the headstrong witch I am, I tried. I really tried. Okay, Mr. Chill, what are you hiding? I saw eyes. Nothing else. I remembered something I forgot to do at work. I wondered what Zinnia was doing. I thought about what I might eat for dinner. Then I remembered a couple of more things I forgot to do at work. My phone buzzed. I was thankful to end our staring contest to check my phone. Aunt Zinnia. I have that information you wanted. Did she mean the information about being spirit charmed? She was always so careful not to use words such as spells or magic in her messages. I texted back, could you be even more cloak and dagger? She wrote back, what? Who said anything about daggers? Just come to my house when you can. I replied that I would see her shortly. Chet was watching me with interest.
Who is that?
The Pope. He shook his head.
Are all witches so sarcastic?
Just the fun ones.